Welcome to Brick Wall Pictures. Today I'm going to be counting down my personal picks for the top 250 greatest films ever made. Not my favorites, the best. As much as I can strive for as an inherently subjective human. There's some preamble and ground rules to cover first, but if you just want to get straight into the list, you can go ahead and jump to the next chapter in the video. And regardless, buckle up because this thing is going to be long. My script for this video is 96 pages long, 24,000 words, which for point of reference is more than a third the length of my second novel, South of the Mason-Dixon, which you can pick yourself up a copy of today in print, ebook, or even audiobook. There's a link down in the description. If you weren't aware, I have a second channel called Brick Wall Unplugged, where I make unscripted content, tier lists, movie tournaments, the occasional live stream, stuff like that. On that channel, I've reacted to a bunch of those best movies of all time lists, like the IMDb Top 250 and the Letterboxd Top 250. And I've been teasing for a long time now that I was going to put out my own personal Top 250. I've been reacting to and critiquing other best movies of all time lists, so it's only fair that I put my money where my mouth is and put my own personal Top 250 movies list out into the world. This has taken me an extremely long time to put together. I also wanted to make sure that I put out my top 100 horror movies and my top 100 action movies lists first. You can find both of those videos in the description. I've been compiling this list off and on for years at this point, adding new movies to it, whittling down the short list of initially around 700 movies, reordering the films constantly, but I have to finally say enough is enough and just put the list out there. I was fiddling with the order of this thing right up until the last moment. And in fact, since the list took me so long to write, I did write-ups for a bunch of movies at the bottom of the list that ended up getting bumped out of the top 250 entirely as I added new movies. So instead of bloating this video further and going past 250 or just scrapping those movies, I decided to put them into a bonus video, which you can find on the newly launched Brick Wall Pictures Patreon. That just went live right before this video released. I'm not really expecting anyone to pledge any money over there, but people have asked a couple of times, and the channel did pass 10K subscribers recently, so I figured it was about time to launch one. We'll see how it goes. And if you do decide to follow me on there, you'll get a bonus video where I cover the extra 19 films that were initially at the bottom of the list and are now runners-up. And there will be other bonus videos and inside info about the channel, my side channel, and all of my personal creative projects, all under that one Patreon. Oh, and thanks for 10K subscribers, by the way. This is my first video since reaching that milestone, which I doubted that the channel would ever hit for a long time. But also, most of my videos still don't get any views, so whatever. I'm not going wild over here. But anyway, let's get back on topic. My personal list will, of course, continue to evolve over time as I see more incredible films and reevaluate the current entries. So this is specifically my top 250 as of 2022. We scratched at 2023. Wait, nope. It's 2024 now. God damn it. This video has really taken me that long to put together. Anyway, a few more years down the line, and this list is liable to look extremely different. Now for the ground rules, and there are a couple of big ones to take into account. With my horror and action movie lists, I had a one per franchise rule, and I am doing away with that rule for this list, meaning sequels are eligible. Now for what isn't eligible, and there's quite a list. Documentaries are excluded. Lots of other top 250 lists include documentaries, but I personally find it a little apples to oranges to try to compare narrative versus nonfiction, even though they're both using the same medium of filmmaking. If I'm ever going to rank documentaries, it will be in a dedicated documentary ranking video. Short films are also ineligible. I think this is pretty self-explanatory, but a few of the other best movies lists I've reacted to over on Brick Wall Unplugged included both documentaries and short films, including the BFI Sight and Sound poll. Again, I think it's a little bit apples to oranges. The last exclusion is also the largest by far. I've made the executive decision to exclude any and all films that landed spots on my top 100 horror films list and my top 100 action films list. Those are roughly 200 excellent films that I adore that are ineligible, and plenty of them would be contenders on this list without that rule. I say roughly because that wasn't a rule between those two lists, and there was a little overlap between action and horror. I'm instituting this rule for a few reasons. Chiefest being that my ultimate goal with these rankings is to sing the praises of great films and hopefully put a bunch of new titles on your radar. And I think it's more interesting to avoid repetition and overlap, even if it makes compiling the lists a little more challenging. If you're wondering where any particularly great action or horror films are, check my action and horror lists, obviously. Now to clarify what I mean about best, not favorite. Every human being contains bias to one degree or another. It's impossible to truly be 100% objective when ranking a subjective art form. That being said, I am making a concerted effort to factor nostalgia and favoritism out of the equation as much as I humanly can. Your favorite films are not necessarily the best films. That's true of everyone. Movies that I adore and revisit often might be more fun, but they might not be as important, resonant, emotional, or powerful as other films. When I think of the best full-stop films, I think of the films that hit the hardest, leave the most profound, lasting impression. The best films can often be so-called challenging watches, but they will reward that patience and effort by orders of magnitude. To be clear, it's not like every movie on this list is some challenging, impenetrable watch. No, there are plenty of fun, funny, accessible, easily engaging films on the list too. I don't want to set the wrong expectations. This isn't a super pretentious list or anything. Maybe a tiny bit, I don't know. I'm just trying to effectively convey what exactly constitutes a truly great film in the criteria for this video. Okay, that's more than enough preamble. Let's get to the list. First up at number 250. Jeanne Dielman. The new #1 spot holder on the Sight and Sound poll doesn't land anywhere near my #1, and in fact just barely snuck onto the list, but it did earn a place here. This is a perfect example of a film that is to be studied, appreciated, and admired, but not so much actively enjoyed. Sitting down and watching 3.5 hours of purposefully dull, mundane, monotonous daily routines can certainly try one's patience, but there's a lot going on here under the hood, and its challenging creative choices do all work in service of the overall goal of the film. It's an important piece and a unique piece, but it is difficult to recommend. Number 249, Fruitvale Station. Ryan Coogler's profile of the last day of a man's life. Not a hero or a villain, not someone to lionize or scrutinize, just a normal man who was taken out of the world long before his time by police brutality and the inherent systemic racism of American law enforcement, as happens all too frequently. Coogler has so much talent as a filmmaker that I wish he would step back a bit from the blockbuster sphere that he's been in the last few years. Just a little bit, to deliver another smaller scale film as emotionally resonant as Fruitvale Station. Number 248. Crash. It should hopefully go without saying that I'm talking about David Cronenberg's Crash, not the one that took home the Best Picture Oscar and is much, 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 much worse. A handful of Cronenberg's films landed in my top 100 horror films list already, otherwise they would probably be on this list too. While Crash certainly isn't completely without some unnerving energy in Cronenberg's trademark grotesquerie, it lands decidedly within dramatic, psychosexual, and romantic territory. All you need to know is that it's a film about a group of people who are sexually aroused by car crashes, and Cronenberg never ostracizes or others his characters, instead treating them with respect and empathy. It's brilliant and completely unique. Number 247, Samurai Rebellion. The first film on the list from the great Japanese filmmaker Masaaki Kobayashi, and it is far from the last. With a title like Samurai Rebellion, you might expect an all-out action film, but this is a far more contemplative piece of work. The titular rebellion is more one of will, morality, and values, rather than one of brute force, though there is certainly some fun swordplay in the latter portions of the film as well. Toshiro Mifune gives one of his most nuanced performances in Samurai Rebellion, and Tetsuya Nakanai is perfect as his foil. Number 246, Young Frankenstein. This is Mel Brooks's blow-for-blow funniest film in my book, and it's especially enjoyable if you're a fan of not just Frankenstein, but the entire Universal horror canon and other black and white horror films of its era. And I love how so many of the jokes have nothing to do with the Frankenstein theming whatsoever, and are just funny gags that could really go anywhere. Number 245, A Fish Called Wanda. For as much as I like all of the Monty Python stuff, John Cleese was at his absolute best in A Fish Called Wanda. The core cast of him, fellow Python Michael Palin, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Kevin Kline are all hysterical. Somehow Kevin Kline especially makes me laugh with every line out of his mouth in this role. Even lines that aren't necessarily meant to be funny on paper, he just makes them funny. This is a perfect comedy that only gets funnier and funnier every time you see it.
Oh, sorry.
Number 244, Tyrannosaur. This is the first film on the list that I have already made a dedicated video about. I spent over 18 minutes going into why this film is incredible, so go watch that video, there's a link in the description. Number 243, Take Shelter. If you didn't see my old top 20 favorite actors video where I named Michael Shannon my favorite living actor, then you could probably guess that anyway based on how many appearances he has on this list. And I'll say there were actually originally a bunch of other extra Michael Shannon movies on this list that were a little bit lower down and ended up dropping off as I kept adding movies. So you can hear about those other movies in that runners-up video over on my new Patreon. Take Shelter features what is not just one of Michael Shannon's best performances, but one of the all-time great performances. Shea Whigham and Jessica Chastain are quite good at this as well, but it's all Shannon all day. If you're a fan of his, you need to see this film. Number 242, Man on the Moon. Contrary to a lot of people, I think, I don't find Jim Carrey's method acting antics endearing or amusing. I think it makes him a huge asshole. But I'll be damned if he didn't give a really good performance as Andy Kaufman. Really though, I don't think Milos Forman gets enough credit for his work in the director's chair on this one, or really in general. Just being patient enough to put up with Carrey throughout the shoot and being enough of a consummate professional to assemble an excellent film while there was a 24/7 tornado rampaging through set is enough to earn him a medal. Number 241, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. I love a good Western, but I'm not all that partial to the old school studio Westerns. For example, don't expect to see The Searchers higher up on this list. I know it makes a lot of people's top 10s, but it didn't do much for me. It kind of seems to me like people act as if the whole movie is just its opening and closing shots, which, yeah, are great, but the rest of the film is still there with all its terrible acting and... hang on, I'm supposed to be talking about The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Right, okay. With its moody visuals and somber tone, this film almost feels more like a film noir that just happens to take place in a Wild West setting, more than being an actual full-blooded Western. Jimmy Stewart is excellent in the lead role, and the titular Liberty Valance, played by Lee Marvin, is a perfect firecracker Western villain. Number 240, Adam Resurrected. I don't think I've ever encountered anybody who's seen this film, and trying to describe it just sounds like gibberish. I might make a dedicated video about this one at some point. For now, let me just call it Paul Schrader's most underappreciated film, and perhaps the strangest film examining the Holocaust. And let's see if that piques your interest. Number 239, Jaws. I got some totally expected pushback for not including Jaws on my top 100 horror films list. I just don't really consider it much of a horror film, more of a drama, but that doesn't mean I don't consider it to be excellent, because I do. I mean, it's here on the list. Number 238, Back to the Future. A classic for good reason. If there's any film on the list that absolutely everybody has seen, it's probably this one. You all know the movie and know why it's great. Let's move on. This video is long enough already. You don't need to hear me wax about Back to the Future. Number 237, Jour de Fete, the first film from physical and visual humor master Jacques Tati. I love all of Tati's films except for his circus thing, and his debut feature contains all of his signatures right off the bat. Tati's entire body of work was so focused and uniform. Jour de Fete fits right alongside all his other films, but it's notable for being his only film to not follow his iconic Monsieur Hulot character, who didn't make his debut until Tati's next film. Number 236, The Philadelphia Story. Jimmy Stewart, Katharine Hepburn, Cary Grant. That's really all that needs to be said. Number 235, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. David Fincher's spin on the material shines as one of the only times that an English language remake has blown the original out of the water. Sony pulling the plug on his planned trilogy was such a crime against the cinematic community, and then they ended up rebooting it or whatever anyway with other people. I still hold out a sliver of hope that Fincher is able to eventually circle back around to this intellectual property. It's not outside the realm of possibility, though it is worth noting that if he stuck to the original books, it would take quite a lot of reworking, in my opinion, as the source material itself takes quite a step down after the first novel. Number 234, Akira. Longtime viewers of this channel or my side channel will know that anime has been a big blind spot for me for way too long, and it still is, but I'm ever so slowly starting to rectify that. Up until about a year or two ago, I could count the number of anime films I'd seen on one hand, and I didn't particularly care for any of them, to be honest, but I'm happy to say that that has changed, and that Akira is the first of 2 anime films to make this list. The art design and animation on display in every single frame of Akira, and the level of detail, it's just astonishing and mesmerizing. It also features a hard sci-fi story that is bold and completely unique. Number 233, Rachel Getting Married. Sort of like how I described Up in the Air if you watched that bonus Patreon video, because that one's on there. Rachel Getting Married was a film that I had incorrectly judged by its cover. I thought it was one of those dime a dozen wedding rom-coms and I didn't bother with it, until I had it recommended to me as a total comp for one of my screenplays, which really surprised me. I could not have been more wrong in my external appraisement of this film. It is so much heavier and real and more lyrical and full of life than I ever would have expected. I've never really been a fan of Anne Hathaway, which was part of why I didn't bother with the film initially, but she is truly incredible in this role. And if I had realized it was directed by the great Jonathan Demme earlier, I would have gotten to it a whole lot sooner. Don't sleep on this one based on its cover, it is great. Number 232, Gett, The Trial of Viviane Amsalem, a gripping drama centered around archaic Israeli divorce court. The film stars and was co-written and co-directed by Ronit Elkabetz, who sadly passed away just 2 years later at only 52 years of age. Gett was her final of 3 directorial efforts, and the 3 films are actually all connected, forming a sort of trilogy, but the plots are just self-contained enough that you can jump right into Gett without being lost or confused. I watched it without knowing that it was part of that trilogy until later on. Number 231, The Worst Person in the World. One of the most recent films on the list, though not the most recent. Joachim Trier's 2021 film became an instant classic that feels timeless in its emotion, while still feeling so of its moment and relevant to modern life. Number 230, Mother. Bong Joon-ho's first appearance on the list, and it won't be his last. Mother is an immaculate, twisty thriller with a firm grip on style, tone, and atmosphere. Number 229, Roman Holiday. A classic screwball comedy. There were a lot of gems that came out of that now mostly forgotten genre. This one pairs up Gregory Peck and Audrey Hepburn, who have endless amounts of chemistry as they canoodle around gorgeous Roman scenery. It's an important time capsule piece as well, since it was one of the films that Dalton Trumbo wrote uncredited while blacklisted in Hollywood during the Red Scare. Number 228, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? The Coen brothers mashed together an ancient epic story, an old-timey comedy, and a folk musical and made something wholly unique. It's a great-looking film, too, made all the more impressive by the fact that it was the first film to be digitally color-graded, earning it a little bit of extra historical relevance. Number 227, Sorry to Bother You. I completely understand why this was a pretty polarizing movie, but those same reasons are why I love it so much. This film takes huge swing after huge swing and is so confident in its unique brand of insanity. The satire and social commentary are perhaps a bit more radical than some people can get on board with, but hey, everything that's being said is perfect in my book, and I think we need more films as bold as this. Number 226, The Squid and the Whale. Kicking and Screaming has its superfans, but The Squid and the Whale was Noah Baumbach's first truly great piece of work in my eyes. Great performances and character work all around, and a heartfelt script that tackles a familiar subject in a way that doesn't feel groundbreaking, but certainly feels more true than it's often depicted. And that's on top of being quite funny all throughout. Number 225, 20th Century Women. This became an instant favorite of mine when it came out, to the extent that I went back to the theater and watched it again before its theatrical run was over, which is not something I do often. I pretty much never do that. Stuffing the soundtrack with songs from my favorite band and making that band a vital part of the plot and the main character's struggle to find identity is a quick cheat code to my heart. Number 224, Triangle of Sadness. One of the more recent entries on the list. I made a video essay that nobody watched examining this film and Ruben Östlund's Force Majeure, or Force Majeure as Östlund pronounces it himself and how I pronounced it in that video. Go watch that video for more thoughts on this. You'll be the first person to ever see it. Number 223, Perfect Blue. This was the first anime film I watched that really connected with me and worked on every level. And you know what it took to push past that barrier for me? It took Joe Bob Briggs hosting it on an episode of The Last Drive-In. That's the kind of mutant I am. From the magnetic animation to the enigmatic and engrossing story, Perfect Blue had me fully sucked in and loving every second of it. It's a complex script that doesn't hold the viewer's hand and is more than happy to leave them floundering and then still pull the rug out from them an extra time or two, and the film is all the better for it. Number 222, There Will Be Blood. I think everyone knows this film already and knows just how great Daniel Day-Lewis is in it, but I think Paul Dano deserves just as much credit as him. The film doesn't work without both of them firing on all cylinders, and luckily, they absolutely do. Number 221, Throne of Blood. Possibly the best direct Shakespeare adaptation out there. Akira Kurosawa tells the story of Macbeth through the lens of a samurai film in a way that makes the story feel entirely his own. This is the first of many Kurosawa appearances on this list. Number 220, The Favorite. I've been following Yorgos Lanthimos since his Dogtooth days, and it's been fascinating to see how an auteur with such a distinctive and challenging directorial voice has approached tempering his abrasive and challenging side without watering down the essence of his style. He managed to craft what was essentially a mainstream, palatable film with The Favorite without sacrificing his unique sensibilities. Time after time, I've watched filmmakers from other countries make the leap into English language filmmaking and lose what made them special, but Yorgos managed to thread that needle and find greater success. The stepping stones of The Lobster and The Killing of a Sacred Deer certainly helped, both of which I thoroughly enjoyed, but don't quite make the list.
Look at me! Look at me! How dare you! Close your eyes!
Number 219, The Ninth Configuration. Talk about an underrated gem. The Ninth Configuration was a case of the studio outright sabotaging their own movie. This was William Peter Blatty's directorial debut, the author of The Exorcist, who would go on to direct the excellent Exorcist III 10 years later as his only other directorial effort. In both instances, Blatty made something remarkable that was shamefully overlooked, and in both instances, he was fighting against the studio financing the movie the entire time. The studio was so meddlesome this time that the entire distribution run planned for the film ended up getting scrapped, and The Ninth Configuration just never hit theaters and never had a chance to be anything other than a financial disaster. I'll probably talk more about this film in another video at some point down the line, so stay tuned for that, I guess. Number 218, Citizen Kane. Okay, so maybe Citizen Kane isn't quite the best film ever made, as a lot of people position it as, but it is excellent and extremely important to film history and the development of the medium. Number 217, Blind Spotting. This blew me away when I went in knowing nothing. I've still never seen anything Hamilton related, but I was already familiar with Daveed Diggs from Clipping. And I didn't recognize him at that point, but it clicked for me who the main actor was the second his character started spoken word freestyling. And I understand why that part of the movie was divisive for some, but I thought it fully worked and helped contribute to the film's one-of-a-kind style. I haven't seen the Starz TV show version of Blind Spotting. It doesn't really seem like a premise that would work as a TV show to me, but then again, neither does Fargo, and that show's excellent, so maybe I'll have to check it out at some point. Number 216, Jackie Brown. Tarantino takes an Elmore Leonard novel about a white woman, turns it into a blaxploitation film, and gives one of his heroes, blaxploitation icon Pam Grier, the best role of her career. Number 215, The Road. As someone who has written a post-apocalyptic novel, that's The Fall of Polite linked down in the description, it's obviously a genre that I'm partial to. I've always considered The Road to be the pinnacle of the post-apocalyptic genre, and that goes for both the book and the film. Number 214, Miller's Crossing. This early Coen Brothers joint finds them tackling the gangster genre and delivering a highlight of its field. Extremely quotable and endlessly rewatchable, as pretty much all of their films are. The Danny Boy machine gun sequence is one of the best scenes they ever shot. Number 213, Strangers on a Train. So many of Alfred Hitchcock's movies were about the perfect murder at the end of the day, and Strangers on a Train is one of his best riffs on that premise, with the core idea that two men can get away with murder by killing someone for the other whom they have no connection to or motive. It's tense, of course, and builds to a thrilling finale with the craziest carousel you'll ever see. Number 212, The Social Network. A bit out of left field for David Fincher's filmography at the time, stretching beyond the thriller genre where he was already classified in a league of his own. With strong performances in a dynamite script from Aaron Sorkin, The Social Network gets me invested in subject matter that I couldn't give any less of a shit about. And for the record, real-life Zuckerberg is infinitely worse than however negatively he's portrayed on screen. Number 211, Prisoners. A pitch-perfect thriller. Hugh Jackman has never been better, and the likes of Paul Dano and David Dastmalchian are perfectly cast. I think this is genuinely one of Roger Deakins' best-looking movies when it comes to tone and atmosphere, as his visuals so perfectly fit the mood and story without being show-offy eye candy in the way that something like 1917 is. 210. Poor Things. One of the most visually stunning films of the modern era, and packed with such variety to its visuals as well. The fish cam shots that Yorgos played around with in The Favorite take sharper, more meaningful form here, and the use of both color and black and white is masterful in each regard. Not to mention the extravagant set design that effectively conjures up its own unique world. And on top of all that, it's a funny and engaging film every step of the way. 209, Sword of Doom. It's a badass title for a samurai film, and it 100% lives up to that title. I'm going to come right out and say it. Released in 1966, Sword of Doom has the best action sequences of its entire decade. Whether you're comparing it to its samurai film contemporaries or the gun and car-focused action films being made abroad, Sword of Doom comes out on top, hands down. You can bet your bottom dollar that it'd be high up on my top 100 action films list if I had seen it at the time that I made that video. Beyond the action, the big draw here is Tatsuya Nakadai's performance. He's become one of my favorite actors, and this is certainly his darkest role. He is pure evil in this film, and he's also the protagonist, with the only people who could be considered good relegated to minor roles in position as the antagonists, making this one for the bad guys, as Tony Montana might say. There's also some delicious, surreal energy at points and fantastic set design and art direction. It's just wonderful, but there's one huge issue that keeps it from ranking as high as it otherwise would, and that's the fact that it doesn't have any ending. And that's not my way of saying the ending is bad or anticlimactic. It really just does not have an ending at all. It just freeze frames right in the middle of a huge sword fight, and that's it. It's over. The film was meant to be the start of a series, which was all the rage in the samurai genre of that era, with the long-running Zatoichi movies and the Masashi Miyamoto samurai trilogy and whatnot. And the long-running samurai series trend continued long after this film, with things like the 6-part Lone Wolf and Cub movie series. So it's unfortunate that Sword of Doom never got a single sequel to tie up all of its numerous loose ends that were left billowing in the breeze. Number 208, Memento. People seem to think that I'm a Christopher Nolan hater, but I think it's just that I'm not a Nolan fanboy. I think a lot of his movies are pretty mid, but not Memento. Memento is far and above the best thing he ever made, and it's rather telling that it's his most stripped-back offering, aside from his low-budget debut with Following. Memento has a brilliant premise, a unique structure, and it executes its complex mystery storyline with style. Number 207, The Hustler. Cutting edge and transgressive for the time when it released in 1961. The Hustler is still a weighty, affecting piece of work. The pool premise is committed to and executed well, but it's also partly a smokescreen to deliver an uncompromising portrayal of addiction and a fascinating relationship dynamic as played to perfection by Paul Newman and Piper Laurie. Plus, Jackie Gleason is unforgettable as Minnesota Fats. And George C. Scott was never short of excellent in anything he did. Number 206, Burn After Reading. This is a tricky film to rank in the Coen filmography, let alone in the grand scheme of all of cinema. It isn't going for or saying as much as many of the Coen brothers' other movies, but it is so endlessly entertaining and hysterically funny from start to finish. A brilliantly utilized cast all around that gives big movie stars like Brad Pitt and George Clooney the opportunity to show off their goofy sides, which should really happen more often. Extremely rewatchable and highly quotable too, especially J.K. Simmons at the end. What did we learn? 205, Cachet. After first exploring the recording subject matter in his 1992 film Benny's Video, Michel Haneke brought the subject to the forefront for 2005's Cachet. He brings his trademark subtlety and restraint to a story that straddles the line between hyper-real drama and disturbing thriller. 204, Tokyo Sonata. Kiyoshi Kurosawa is best known for his horror films, but Tokyo Sonata was a surprising departure for him as a straight drama with an affecting, well-observed script and multiple moments that resonate deeply. 203, The Seventh Seal. Ingmar Bergman was capable of going long when a story called for it, like the 5-hour, 19-minute cut of Fanny and Alexander, which, spoiler alert, we'll be talking about later on. But unlike some filmmakers who embrace hefty runtimes as part of their signature, Bergman was more than capable of keeping a film tight and laser-focused. Persona is a great example of that with its 83-minute runtime, but it's also a small and intimate story, which is why I think the 96-minute The Seventh Seal is an even better example of brevity and expert pacing, within a story that masterfully tackles subjects as huge as God and death in layered, nuanced ways. Number 202, Broker. Set in South Korea with a Korean cast headed up by the always excellent Song Kang-ho, but written and directed by Japanese filmmaker Hirokazu Koreeda, Broker tells the story of a sort of underground baby exchange, bringing unwanted babies to paying parents. For some, Broker was held back a bit by retreading so much of the territory that Koreeda had already covered 4 years earlier in his film Shoplifters. And I can understand that criticism completely, but for me that retreading is intentional and even beneficial to both Broker and Shoplifters, and the themes that Koreeda is clearly fixated on. By tackling the same subjects of found family amongst two different groups of people who are technically criminals but clearly have good hearts and lovable personalities, but telling those similar stories in different countries, I think it speaks to the universality of the themes and the feelings that Koreeda is trying to get across. I thought Shoplifters was great, but I connected even more strongly to the characters in Broker, and I just wanted to keep spending time with this found family long after the film ended. Number 201, An Elephant Sitting Still. A flawed masterpiece. The nearly 4-hour runtime is certainly daunting and is maybe not entirely warranted, but this is a special, one-of-a-kind work of art that came at a high cost. It's a film that has continued to improve the longer that I have been sitting still with it. That's right, I'm the elephant. Big twist. I've been meaning to make a full video about this film for a long time now. I've really got to get around to it. Number 200, The Square. Of Ruben Östlund's 2 Palme d'Or winners, The Square is my favorite. By the way, picking up 2 Palme d'Ors is something only 9 filmmakers have ever done in history, and 2 of them are the co-directing Dardenne brothers, so it's more like 8 distinct filmmaking entities, really. Nobody has ever picked up 3, and Östlund is the youngest of the directors to earn 2 by a significant margin, so if anyone has a shot at collecting 3, it's probably him. The Square is like a modern-day Pierrot Le Fou, constantly seeming to jump to different stories and genres, but retaining a strong overarching narrative and pointed social commentary focal point. Number 199, Her. After directing some great Charlie Kaufman scripts, Spike Jonze knocked it out of the park with his first fully original screenplay. How many people can say they won an Oscar for their first solo screenplay? Spike Jonze can. His Beastie Boys documentary was great, but come on, Spike, give us another feature film. It's been over a decade already, man. Number 198, Mikey and Nicky. The best John Cassavetes film that John Cassavetes didn't actually make. He and frequent collaborator Peter Falk play the 2 lead roles and are both phenomenal, but it's Elaine May who's behind the camera. She's clearly playing by Cassavetes' rules a little bit, but keeps a tighter grip on the narrative and edit to craft a more focused film. They spent 7 months shooting, always at night, and May supposedly shot 1.4 million feet of film, and would let multiple cameras just roll and roll and roll. The shoot got so out of hand that 20th Century Fox dropped the film, then Paramount picked it up, then Paramount ended up suing May for taking so long to deliver a finished film. If you haven't seen the film, all of that drawn-out chaos might make you expect the final cut to be some long epic, but it's only a crisp hour and 45 minutes. Shooting so much footage enabled Cassavetes and Falk to use an ordinary, simplistic gangster story as the canvas to deliver 2 of the finest exploratory performances of all time. Number 197, Before the Devil Knows You're Dead. The last film from the great Sidney Lumet, made while he was in his 80s, and he sure went out with a hell of a bang. Lumet always excelled at bringing the absolute best out of his casts, and this was no exception. Everyone is phenomenal in this, but Ethan Hawke and Philip Seymour Hoffman especially do some of the best work of their respective careers as desperate brothers falling deeper and deeper into a hell pit of their own making. Like you'll still be hearing me say a couple times on this list, it's one of Philip Seymour Hoffman's best performances, which is really saying something. Number 196, A Serious Man. Not the Coen brothers' best in terms of raw entertainment value, but potentially their richest in terms of subtext, and it's still extremely entertaining. Number 195, Silence. Late-stage Scorsese has been such a joy to witness in real time. I'm not sure why Silence didn't seem to draw as much attention and love as some of his other efforts, but I found it to be truly phenomenal. This is closest to The Last Temptation of Christ in his body of work, but is an extremely different, more meditative and contemplative exploration of religion and faith. The fact that I quite vehemently despise religion and reality, but was so thoroughly engrossed in the struggle of faith, is a real testament to Scorsese's power as a filmmaker. Number 194, Paper Moon. The era in which this was made makes its Great Depression setting all the more fascinating. The New Hollywood movement has long been my favorite period of filmmaking, and Paper Moon fits snugly into that movement, while also feeling like a major departure in so many ways. Tatum O'Neal's performance is really all that it's cracked up to be. Still probably the best single-digit performance ever. If you want to feel good, watch Paper Moon. And then if you want to feel depressed as shit afterward, read about how awful her on-screen and real-life dad, Ryan O'Neal, treated her during and after production. Number 193, Blowout. Indisputably one of Brian De Palma's best, if not his outright best. In some ways, it feels like the culmination of all of his story and style fixations, and his stellar visual flourishes are bolstered by a phenomenal script. Number 192, The Conversation. The fact that Francis Ford Coppola released this in the same year as The Godfather Part 2 and was competing against himself at the Academy Awards is legendary. Taken on its own, it's a masterful paranoia thriller, but it ascends even higher the more you factor historical context into the film. Hitting theaters just 2 years after Watergate, the paranoia thriller was an entire subgenre for a brief period in the 70s, and The Conversation stands tall as not just one of the pioneers, but as one of the best. Number 191, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. A truly unique sci-fi love story stemming in part from the mind of the incomparable Charlie Kaufman, and Michel Gondry's eye for impossible visuals and effects is a perfect marriage with the material. Number 190, Frances Ha. This is a clear-cut example of a film that would rank significantly higher if I were just doing a list of my favorite films and not striving for best and trying to factor out some of my bias. I adore this film, and I made an entire video essay about it a long time ago, a whole bunch of years ago, about its use of motivated camera movement, which you can find a link to in the description. Number 189, Gone Girl. One of David Fincher's best thrillers, which means it's one of the best thrillers ever made. The book is great too, but Fincher has an knack for elevating source material, whereas many directors struggle to condense novels into tighter packages and wind up making truncated, inferior replications. Number 188, Opening Night. John Cassavetes and Getta Rowlands were and always will be one of the best cinematic duos of all time. Check out my big-ass John Cassavetes video essay to learn more. Link in the description. Number 187, First Reformed. A triumph from Paul Schrader, again tackling his familiar fixations, but in a recontextualized package that works perfectly. I will say that watching Ingmar Bergman's 1963 film Winter Light after the fact gave me such a strong sense of deja vu that I honestly feel like Bergman probably should have gotten a co-writer credit on First Reformed, so take that for what you will. But at the end of the day, First Reformed certainly has its own style and identity. It is, I think, the stronger film in all actuality. Number 186, Another Round. The team who made The Hunt reteamed for Another Round nearly a decade later and made another outstanding piece of work with a drastically different tone that finds an atypical balance between hard-hitting social drama and an unbridled sense of fun. It feels like a stretch to call Another Round a comedy. It doesn't really have jokes as such, but it does have a palpable sense of fun and fraternity in a way. You buy the friendship at the heart of the film so thoroughly, and are right alongside these characters for all the good times and the bad. It would have been so easy for this to feel like a preachy message movie, but it luckily sidesteps that pitfall to deliver a nuanced and fair examination of its core themes. Number 185, Midnight Cowboy. Plenty of people talk about how noteworthy it is that Midnight Cowboy is the only X-rated film to win Best Picture, a feat that will almost certainly never happen again. But not enough people talk about how crazy it is that the film was rated X in the first place. Sure, it's a film about a male prostitute, but the X rating makes it sound like it must be explicit and gratuitous, and it's not at all. The MPAA was never shy about showing their homophobic side, and I think that's all that really factored into it here. It's also important to remember that the Hays Code wasn't officially repealed until 1968. Then bang, Midnight Cowboy drops in 1969. Number 184, 5 Easy Pieces. Influential is putting it mildly. After stealing the show with his supporting role in Easy Rider, Five Easy Pieces put Nicholson on the map as a leading man after he had already spent over an entire decade in the industry, mostly failing to find success. Though his villain role in The Shooting is definitely worth watching. The script for Five Easy Pieces is strange and loose, but perfectly evocative of the times as it turns Nicholson's character into a counterculture icon. It's rather rough around the edges, but that's honestly part of why it works so well, and Nicholson's performance is an all-timer. Number 183, Son of Saul. This film makes the bold visual choice to present everything from an extremely limited point of view. By using a square frame and keeping the camera close to the protagonist at all times, the audience is only given glimpses of the horrors of the Holocaust happening all around him. It almost sounds counterintuitive, but by withholding so much visual information, the film manages to not only ground you thoroughly in the main character's point of view, but also ratchet up the senses of immersion and realism as far as they could possibly go, making for an incredibly tense and claustrophobic viewing experience. Number 182, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. One of Scorsese's underappreciated masterpieces. I think you can trace a direct line from Five Easy Pieces to Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, with this one taking on a feminine point of view on a similar narrative and timely thematic exploration. Ellen Burstyn's Oscar and BAFTA wins for this role were fully deserved. Number 181, Burning. One of the most cryptic and enigmatic thrillers in recent years, and it's all the more powerful for what goes unsaid. This is a thriller that will creep into your subconscious if you allow it the space to continue existing after the credits have rolled. Number 180, Serpico. The film that brought together the great Sidney Lumet and Al Pacino at the height of his powers, made between The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2. It's perhaps the quintessential undercover cop story, and a remarkably progressive one at that, showcasing widespread and systemic police corruption. Number 179, Some Like It Hot. My two biggest takeaways from Some Like It Hot were that it's easy to see why Marilyn Monroe became such a timeless icon, and that it was shockingly ahead of its time. I was expecting a film from the 50s about cross-dressing to be dated in uncomfortable ways, but no, it's still relatively progressive even by today's standards. Billy Wilder really didn't miss. There's a reason why this is just one of a handful of his films on the list. Number 178, Easy Rider. Few films have had as seismic of an impact on American cinema and culture in general as Easy Rider. An incredibly important film that also happens to have one of my favorite abrupt 70s endings, which I talked about in that same video that I analyzed Frances Ha, oddly enough. Number 177, My Dinner with Andre. How do you make a compelling film out of essentially nothing more than two guys having a chat over dinner? This is the answer. Wall-to-wall, vivid dialogue that will have you gripped, and performances that are engaging and charismatic enough to mentally transport you beyond the dinner table into the realm of the conversation itself, without the camera needing to follow. Number 176, The Wrestler. One of Darren Aronofsky's best, and I've noticed that even a lot of people who hate Aronofsky's work in general are still won over by The Wrestler. It's probably Aronofsky's most understated work as a visual director, but his choices behind the camera, such as his repeated use of certain shots, all serve the story and the characters. This also feels like the role that Mickey Rourke was born to play, and he does something really special with it. Number 175, The Great Dictator. Charlie Chaplin runs through his timeless bag of silent slapstick comedy tricks as usual, but also makes a sobering departure to deliver a monologue more than worthy of the burgeoning talkie era. It's important to remember the historical context. The Great Dictator was released in 1940, not after World War II, right at the very start of it. The war began in 1939, and The Great Dictator was already in production. While the film was being made in early 1939, Germany hadn't yet invaded Poland. The war hadn't yet started. England was avoiding getting involved, and the United States wouldn't enter the war until 1941. During production, Chaplin was explicitly told that his film would be banned in Britain and the United States, both of his markets. But he didn't let that stop him. At the time, The Great Dictator was a bold and controversial film, and it ran the risk of being banned due to the so-called appeasement policy, which was basically the British government censoring anti-Nazi sentiment to avoid ruffling feathers. People don't like to bring that up in retrospect, but it was a thing. With this closing monologue and the earlier bouncing globe scene, Chaplin delivered a message that desperately needed to be delivered. Let's not allow the passage of time to erase the tremendous importance of this piece of work. It's still all too relevant today. Free Palestine. Number 174, La Samurai. There's a full review on my second channel, Brickwall Unplugged, for La Samurai, done with Bryce Woods, an indie filmmaker who cites La Samurai and Jean-Pierre Melville's other work as a core influence on his style. There's a link to that in the description. Go check it out if you feel like it. Number 173, The Last Detail. If you saw my video on Randy Quaid's Star Whackers monstrosity, The Last Detail is the perfect reminder that nutbag did have genuine talent and potential back at the start of his career. From director Hal Ashby and with a screenplay by Robert Towne, better known as the writer of Chinatown, The Last Detail delivers a quintessential 70s drama, reflective of the mindset of the times and rich in social commentary, while providing dimensional characters for the cast to sink their teeth into, especially Jack Nicholson, in what might not be one of his most iconic roles, but arguably should be. Number 172, Wanda. I plan to make a dedicated video about Wanda at some point in the hopefully not too distant future, so I'll keep it brief here and just say that Wanda deserves a reputation several times larger than it has today, cutting edge and progressive to its detriment. Number 171, Cure. Kiyoshi Kurosawa is a phenomenal director, but in my opinion, he's not quite as strong of a writer as he is a director. Usually. Cure is one of the rare times when he delivered a script worthy of his own directorial talents, and the end result is a masterful horror thriller that will wheedle its way into your subconscious and linger there. Cure is a film that surely would have landed in my top 100 horror films list, but I hadn't seen it until putting that list together, hence it's eligible here. Number 170, Stray Dog. The story of a Japanese cop desperately trying to find the pistol he lost with no leads. What could have been a straightforward procedural is elevated by having a master at the helm in the form of Akira Kurosawa. No relation to Kiyoshi Kurosawa, which I only say because the two somehow wound up with back-to-back entries. Purely coincidental. Number 169, Holy Motors. Leos Carax's bizarro vignette film stitches together disconnected stories in a manner far more compelling than just about any other vignette film. Instead of just some wraparound framing device, the overarching narrative is thought-provoking and compelling all on its own. You could spend hours analyzing the linking spine alone, not to mention how great the actual vignettes themselves are. Number 168, Rushmore. Wes Anderson's sophomore effort has remained one of his best. There's so much heart and personality to the story, and it's hilarious all throughout. Number 167, Dazed and Confused. The pinnacle of the hangout movie, and of course it came from Richard Linklater, who practically made this subgenre his own signature. Number 166, Reservoir Dogs. Tarantino came out of the gates swinging, as long as you don't count his unfinished first attempt. Reservoir Dogs is iconic for a reason. Endlessly quotable and stylish as all hell. Number 165, Seven. A highlight of the serial killer thriller genre. David Fincher is the king of this specific type of creepy procedural thriller, and no one really nails that tone and vibe more perfectly than him. Number 164, Moonrise Kingdom. Maybe not quite his best, but Moonrise Kingdom is the Wes Anderson film that resonates the deepest with me on an emotional level. Number 163, Werckmeister Harmonies. Bela Tarr, the name synonymous with slow cinema, is in top form with this meditative, nihilistic, and allegorical work. It's a film that finds beauty in unexpected places and then grinds that beauty to dust for the sake of its heavy-hitting, if obfuscated, message. It's a film that demands contemplation to get the most out of it, and Tarr gives you plenty of time for contemplation with his masterful, lingering, slow takes. Number 162, Blood Simple. It still blows my mind that Blood Simple was the first film from the Coen brothers. Their first outing is a pitch-perfect thriller that displays a mastery of tension that many filmmakers go their entire careers without being able to achieve. Number 161, The Night of the Hunter. A classic for good reason. Robert Mitchum is unforgettable as the evil Harry Powell. The film also stands as something of an oddity as the only film directed by Charles Laughton, who was better known as a respected actor. The Night of the Hunter was so far ahead of its time that people outright didn't get it. and the film wasn't reevaluated as a misunderstood classic until many years later. Number 160, Boogie Nights. So full of energy and creativity that it's practically bursting at the seams. When you step back and analyze the entirety of Boogie Nights, it seems like something that wouldn't work. Too many characters and subplots and not enough of a cohesive narrative throughline. Yet somehow this precarious house of cards never comes crashing down. Number 159, Bone Tomahawk. I've already spoken extensively about S. Craig Zahler's entire body of work, from his films to his books and even his unproduced screenplays. I might be the biggest fan of the guy out there. Go check out any of my Zahler videos to hear more. Bone Tomahawk, one of the best westerns ever made. And if you want more westerns from Zahler, go read his books A Congregation of Jackals or Wraiths of the Broken Land. 158, His Girl Friday. My favorite of the old screwball comedies. It is so funny all throughout, and Cary Grant gives what is by far my favorite performance of his. The dialogue is so sharp and witty, and its strengths are highlighted further by just how much of it there is and how goddamn fast it's delivered. Everyone is a motor mouth delivering their lines so quickly that it sounds like at any moment any one of them is about to choke on their own tongue and die. Number 157, The Pianist. An emotionally devastating portrayal of the ghettos of World War II. Adrian Brody is a revelation in the lead role, and the film is just brilliantly assembled on every level. It's almost unfair how Roman Polanski can be such an incredible filmmaker and such a monumental piece of shit at the same time. And since I seem to lose subscribers and get triggered comments every time I call out the scumbaggery of pieces of shit like Polanski or Woody Allen, know that I do not care. Go ahead and unsubscribe and cope and make excuses or denials and bury your head in the sand. He drugged and raped multiple underage girls. It's bizarre how many of you want to throw yourselves on the train tracks to defend him and pretend that didn't happen. You can still appreciate his movies, obviously. Okay, anyway, let's get way off topic. Let's move on. Number 156, Inglorious Basterds, one of Tarantino's best. From the masterfully tense opening to the extremely cathartic alternate history skewing of the finale, it's a great time. There are a couple of World War II movies on this list, and Inglorious Basterds is the only one that I would really call a fun time. And there's definitely a place for that amongst all of the harrowing realism to deliver something more gratifying and akin to wish fulfillment in a sense. Number 155, Amores Perros. With his feature-length debut, Alejandro González Iñárritu feels like he emerged as a fully formed filmmaker with a clear voice, style, and command of the medium. The interconnected nature of the plot is a format he would return to with both Babel and 21 Grams, in what is collectively known as either the Trilogy of Life or the Death Trilogy. But the first entry remained the most striking and is the only one on my list. Number 154, The Assassination of Jesse James. As beautiful and haunting a Western as there has ever been. The cinematography is nothing short of stunning from the first frame to the last, and the achingly beautiful original score by Nick Cave and Warren Ellis seriously elevates things. Number 153, Rafifi. The silent heist sequence is a masterclass in tension and visual storytelling. The film around it is solid too, of course, but it's that grand centerpiece heist that elevates the film to all-timer status. Number 152, The Grand Budapest Hotel. This in many ways feels like the ultimate culmination of Wes Anderson's style. Obviously he has continued making movies, but I feel like this is the film where he pushed his unique aesthetic to the limit, creating his own vibrant world to play around in. Number 151, Dragged Across Concrete. Everything I said for Bone Tomahawk, ditto. Check out my Dragged Across Concrete video essay for an in-depth analysis. Number 150, Dogtooth. The film that first put Yorgos Lanthimos on the map for world cinema lovers before his mainstream success later on. Dogtooth is by far his most challenging watch and can be a little bit impenetrable. A huge chunk of the audience that loved The Favorite is sure to bounce right off of Dogtooth and find it disgusting. But with that abrasive edge comes added power if you can get on its wavelength. It's a hard but rewarding watch that can be genuinely upsetting and leave you grappling with its content and its themes, which are brilliantly explored as long as you meet the film halfway and engage with the cryptic, esoteric way it presents its points. There's incisive and incendiary social commentary on subjects like homeschooling and parenting in general to be found within all of the uncomfortable grossness. Number 149, Sophie's Choice. How many movies have spawned a ubiquitous shorthand phrase that everyone knows and uses, or misuses? You've got the 1944 noir Gaslight, and this. That's about it. Meryl Streep is truly remarkable here. It's not an overhyped or exaggerated performance. She's really that good. And Kevin Kline deserves more credit for his performance, too. He's great in this. Number 148, The Insider. One of Michael Mann's best, right alongside Heat as the drama equivalent of that propulsive actioner. From the script to cast to direction, everything about The Insider coalesces perfectly into one of the best dramas of the 90s. Number 147, Climax. The opening dancing sequence alone would almost be enough to earn Climax a spot on the list. What really seals the deal, in lack of some grand narrative, is Noé's mastery of the technical aspects of filmmaking, which uses the craft something that's more of a feeling and an experience than a story. And what an experience it is. Number 146, Mirror. Not Andrei Tarkovsky's best on a narrative level to me, but he was in top form tonally and visually, which means it's one of the best looking films ever made and contains striking images and dynamic camera movement decisions that are likely to stick in your mind for the rest of time. Number 145, Schindler's List. Powerful and important. I somehow missed out on the classroom viewing experience of this that a lot of people seem to get, and I didn't see it until years later. And it was much better than I was anticipating as someone who often isn't as blown away by Spielberg's work as many are. Number 144, Parasite. The massive success of Parasite fills me with optimism. It's the perfect antidote to the apathy instilled in me by the usual mainstream box office successes. This is the good kind of modern influential film as opposed to all that MCU junk. And if even a sliver of the huge audience it broke through to go on and check out broader South Korean cinema, then that's a big win. And speaking of broader South Korean cinema, number 143, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. This is often the least praised of Chan-wook Park's Vengeance trilogy, but while Old Boy is an instant knockout, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance is the quietly powerful entry that grows exponentially upon each rewatch. Bifurcated storytelling used perfectly to deliver a bleak revenge tale where everything is morally gray and everyone suffers. Number 142, Malcolm X. Probably one of the most important biopics out there, and since someone always comments some dumb shit, instead of talking about Malcolm X, I'm going to take this moment to address the word biopic. No, it is not biopic. I don't care how right you think you are. People say it's biopic because it's short for biographical picture. It's like, no, the bio is short for biography. You hear how that's pronounced? Biography, biography, biopic. You don't pronounce it biography. No one says, yes, I'm reading a biography. I'm reading the biography of Malcolm X. No, you're reading the biography of Malcolm X. What the fuck? The same letters are pronounced differently in different contexts. What the fuck is so hard to understand about that? And okay, moving on, because that doesn't matter in the slightest. And, just between us, to be perfectly honest, I think it's the kind of thing that you can really pronounce either way. Go ahead, say biopic, I don't care. But if you try to correct me on it, then you're wrong and you're an asshole. Number 141, Yojimbo. A fantastic samurai film. If you saw and enjoyed A Fistful of Dollars but haven't yet seen Yojimbo, you might be struck by intense deja vu when you do. In looking into the similarities, I found that Akira Kurosawa considered A Fistful of Dollars to be a straight-up unauthorized adaptation, and he supposedly ended up striking a deal with Sergio Leone for a cut of the box office of A Fistful of Dollars after it came out. But it's hard to tell how much of that is myth and how much is fact. This is surely the most clear case study of the influence that samurai films had on westerns, which was widespread. Not to mention the samurai genre's influence on something like Star Wars too. Number 140, Sanjuro. Made back-to-back by Akira Kurosawa and both starring his frequent leading man Toshiro Mifune, Yojimbo and Sanjuro have the feeling of being a perfect 1-2 punch of samurai movies. Make a double feature out of them. Number 139, Being John Malkovich. I've never been able to get past just how outside the box and brilliant of a concept Being John Malkovich is. No one but Charlie Kaufman would have written this script in a million years, and that's what makes it so special. Number 138, Rear Window. My favorite Hitchcock joint alongside Psycho, which was in my top 100 horror list and is ineligible here. Rear Window is a masterful thriller with a great concept and use of limited POV that has been ripped off countless times over all these years since, but has never been bested. Number 137, Kramer vs. Kramer. A phenomenal drama with incredible performances and a deeply emotional screenplay, elevated further by little moments of improv, which I touched on in my How to Give Actors Freedom video essay. Number 136, Punch Drunk Love, one of my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movies and one of the handful of films that showcase just how great of an actor Adam Sandler can be when paired with the right director and the right material. His character is endlessly watchable, and the script is quirky and eccentric in just the right ways. And I can't talk about this film without professing my love for Philip Seymour Hoffman yet again. He takes what could really be a minor supporting role and turns it into something unforgettable, just like he always did.
Shut up! Will you shut up? Shut up! Shut up!
Number 135, Pulp Fiction. A stone-cold classic. What can I say about Pulp Fiction that hasn't been said a million times before? On a personal level, it's somewhat odd to find myself placing the film at this spot on the list. When I was first getting into cinema, I thought Pulp Fiction was the best film ever made, and I think that's a phase that a lot of budding cinephiles go through. Tarantino's work is a great gateway in that sense. Number 134, Irreversible. A tough watch, but a worthwhile one if you can stomach the brutality and the grime. And the reverse ordering gimmick is more than just a gimmick. It's unique and captivating, but it also alters the way you perceive the events of the film in crucial ways, setting it far apart from the days of the old rape, revenge, exploitation film genre, even though it would otherwise be right at home there if told linearly. And No Way is fully aware of that. Number 133, Threads, the only made-for-TV movie on the list. Threads is a powerful, sickening, and panic attack-inducing watch. It is the bleakest and also the most realistic post-apocalyptic film ever made. But that's because it's not entirely a post-apocalyptic film. It's also an apocalyptic film and a pre-apocalyptic film too. Remarkably, it doesn't feel held back by its format or budget in the slightest. If anything, it almost seems to compound the sense of realism. The film takes a pseudo-documentary approach at times to tackle the escalation effect and fallout of a nuclear war in unflinching detail, and the word harrowing doesn't even begin to cover it. Number 132, The Piano Teacher. He still has a couple of films that I'm yet to see, but The Piano Teacher is my top Hanukkah work at present. Isabelle Huppert is perfect in this role as an incredibly complex and compelling character, and Hanukkah's trademark use of long takes feels especially appropriate, impressive, and impactful in this deceptively layered story. Number 131, Poetry. Take it as the highest endorsement that out of Lee Chang-dong's rather short body of work, all three of his films that I've seen thus far made it onto this list. Let's all try to collectively make his name just as well known as the South Korean filmmaking contemporaries of Bong Joon-ho and Park Chan-wook. Poetry is an exceptionally difficult film to talk about without spoiling things, as there is a major plot twist that happens not toward the end, but about 35 minutes into its 2-hour and 20-minute runtime. The forward-facing story is beautiful and delicate and heartfelt, but beyond that there's a dark undercurrent below the surface that makes you question how that same beauty can truly be seen and appreciated after we've been forced to confront the sickening realities of the world that are so nonchalantly covered up and breezed past. It's a somewhat challenging watch that doesn't handhold and doesn't pull its punches, and it luckily manages to stick the landing on its complex thematic exploration right in the closing moments. Number 130, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I was so glad to see this film get the credit it deserves and show up on meaningful retrospectives like the new BFI Sight and Sound poll. It's fully deserving of all those accolades and more. The setting, the romance, and the art itself are all captured in profoundly beautiful ways. Number 129, Faces. I already talked extensively about Faces in my John Cassavetes video essay, so go check that one out to learn more. But I will say here that Faces should rightfully be hailed as one of the most influential and groundbreaking films ever made, but it rarely gets its due. At least filmmakers like Peter Bogdanovich and Martin Scorsese have always championed Cassavetes and credit him with his rightful influence in the industry. Scorsese has even been talking about shadows again recently while doing press for Killers of the Flower Moon. I wrote this part of the script before Killers of the Flower Moon had released. God damn it, I've been working on this video for such a long ass time. Number 128, Cobra Verde. One of the infamous collaborations between Werner Herzog and his volatile star Klaus Kinski. A terrible and terrifying human being, but truly one of the most magnetic presences to ever grace the screen. Herzog himself said it best in his documentary about their dynamic, quote, Klaus was one of the greatest actors of the century, but he was also a monster and a great pestilence. This was the combative duo's final collaboration, and Kinski died just a few years later. Kinski's performance is compelling as always, but this time, even more striking than Kinski is the film's setting. Herzog was always ready to embrace the harshest filming conditions possible, and he shot Cobra Verde all over the world to make use of a multitude of stunning locations, just like he did for certain other projects, like his version of Nosferatu. And it really paid off. Not only are the locations nothing short of breathtaking, but Herzog uses them in such interesting ways. Locations as characters is true, and it works wonders here. Number 127, The Last Emperor. I wasn't expecting The Last Emperor to be anywhere near as gripping as it turned out to be when I put it on. I was honestly expecting a stuffy, Oscar bait costume drama period piece, which is not often my speed, but it delivered so much more. I actually watched it specifically to hear David Byrne's original score, as a huge fan of his, since he won the Oscar for it. And yeah, his work on the film is excellent. Between this and M. Butterfly, it's a shame that star John Lone's body of work was so small before he seemingly retired from acting altogether in 2007. Number 126, Fargo. A perfect crime film with the perfect balance of eccentricity and dark humor. The Fargo TV show is excellent as well if you enjoy the film and want more of that style, but in a drastically different way at the same time. Number 125, Memories of Murder. After his promising but flawed feature-length debut with Barking Dogs Never Bite, which I have a review for on the channel, Bong Joon-ho's second film delivered on all of that promise. Memories of Murder is an immaculate thriller and stands tall as one of the best entries in the canon of serial killer detective films. Number 124, The Double Life of Veronique. With each work from Krzysztof Kieslowski that I see, the more I become convinced that he deserves a reputation as one of the very best filmmakers to ever live. His body of work is one that I plan to talk much more about in the future. And this film is just breathtaking for every single shot. Number 123, Sorcerer. An extremely rare instance of a remake sneaking its way onto the list, and a remake of what was already a phenomenal film. Honestly, the original could have made it onto this list too, but I didn't want to take up two slots with the same story. And Sorcerer does manage to edge out The Wages of Fear in my book. William Friedkin keeps the premise of a group of desperate men driving trucks filled with volatile explosives across unforgiving terrain, but he crafts more interesting backstories for the main characters, presents a more fully realized setting, and gets more mileage out of that setting. And he also utilizes the advancements in technology and special effects since 1953, the year of the original film, to 1977, the year of his remake, to set his film apart in many ways. This is one film that I might make a dedicated video about in the future, or at least talk about in some form or another. Number 122, The Big Lebowski. Fucking hilarious from start to finish. Genuinely one of the funniest movies ever written. And it's got such a smart, layered neo-noir plot stewing in the background that just completely goes over the protagonist's head, which is in itself hilarious. Number 121, Marriage Story. For a couple of decades, Kramer vs. Kramer was the definitive divorce movie until Marriage Story came along. I made a video essay about this one that you can check out, specifically focusing on the way that it redefines the close-up. Number 120, Naked. As a big fan of both director Mike Leigh and star David Thewlis, I went into Naked with high expectations and was still blown away on every level. When you know that Mike Leigh's process is entirely improvisation-driven, Thewlis's constant motor-mouth diatribes become even more impressive. Thewlis takes an awful, despicable character and makes him endlessly compelling, with a performance that is so staggeringly brilliant that it's almost impossible to believe. Number 119, The Salesman. From Iranian filmmaker Asghar Farhadi, The Salesman uses Arthur Miller's timeless Death of a Salesman play as a focal touchpoint to delve into a complex human drama, as he always does so well. Number 118, The Bad Sleep Well. The Bad Sleep Well doesn't always come up in discussions of Kurosawa's best work, but I think it should. He's a director most famous for his many samurai films, and while I like those a whole lot, obviously, I found that his contemporary set works are the ones that resonate the most with me on a human level. Number 117, Secrets and Lies. A tremendously powerful work from director Mike Leigh. The performances and characters are world-class across the board, and Leigh and cinematographer Dick Pope find creative and unexpected ways to capture the drama while never sacrificing the utmost clarity or taking any emphasis away from the performers. The emphasis is always 100% on the performances in Mike Leigh's work. Number 116, Hana-Bi. I plan on discussing the work of Takeshi Kitano, aka Beat Takeshi, in a video essay at some point, and Hana-Bi, aka Fireworks, is one of his absolute best. It has his trademark flair for violence while also having a deeper emotional core and telling a deceptively personal story. Number 115, Lost Highway. I'm a David Lynch superfan. Lost Highway maybe isn't one of his most talked about works, but it's no less mesmerizing or masterful. Every single frame featuring the Mystery Man is permanently ingrained in my memory. Number 114, Shortcuts. Easily one of Robert Altman's best. He's working with fantastic Raymond Carver source material and one of the most interesting eclectic ensemble casts ever assembled. Tom Waits, Lily Tomlin, Tim Robbins, Matthew Modine, Julianne Moore, Jack Lemmon, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Robert Downey Jr., Frances McDormand, and like 200 other notable people. It even features fully outside-the-box appearances from people like Alex Trebek of Jeopardy fame and Huey Lewis of The News fame. Number 113, Vera Drake. I talked about this film pretty extensively in my video essay about giving actors freedom. Mike Leigh's style is all about improvisation and actor freedom, and that style has led to some of the best dramas ever made. Imelda Staunton gives one of the finest performances ever put to screen. I'm talking top 10 leading actress performances of all time, maybe even top 5, though that's a list ordering I'll have to save for another day. Number 112, Sunset Boulevard. A highlight of the classic era of film noir and one of Billy Wilder's best, which is really saying something with a filmography as diverse and captivating as his. The iconic moments and lines are timeless for good reason. Number 111, Hunger. After making nearly 24 short films, director Steve McQueen's feature-length debut was a long-awaited triumph. The great Michael Fassbender is at the top of his game in this true story of Bobby Sands leading the IRA prison hunger strike. McQueen's directorial choices are all so purposeful and creative, never taking the easy approach to any individual moment. At times, Hunger almost feels like a silent film with its aversion to dialogue, but then it does a 180 and delivers wall-to-wall dialogue in an unbroken shot that lasts for over 17 minutes. It's almost as if McQueen made the bold decision to condense an entire film's worth of dialogue into a single shot while letting the rest of the film breathe in near silence, and the result is captivating. Number 110, Doubt. Adapting his own stage play for the silver screen, John Patrick Shanley does an impressive job of retaining the DNA of the project without feeling like a filmed play, as so many stage-to-screen adaptations often do. From the scene-stealing appearance from Viola Davis to the leading trio of Philip Seymour Hoffman, Amy Adams, and Meryl Streep, the acting is just phenomenal across the board. And the script provides complex characters and layered dialogue for them to sink their teeth into. Number 109, The Master. A second PSH role in a row, and he is again unbelievably good, this time in the role of Lancaster Dodd, a pseudo-cult leader with endless depth. Joaquin Phoenix is similarly fantastic, and the one-on-one scenes between the two of them are nothing short of gripping. The Master is a film that grows on you and improves with every rewatch. The first time I watched it, I enjoyed the performances and the cinematography, but was left a little cold by the story. I warmed to the film on a second watch, and by my third viewing, I absolutely loved it. It's a film with layers that can't all be taken in with a single viewing. Number 108, we need to talk about Kevin. Lynn Ramsey has such a purely unique voice as a filmmaker. What makes the story of We Need to Talk About Kevin so gripping isn't the story itself, it's how Ramsey tells it. The order she presents scenes in, the way she flows between them, the simultaneously loose yet tight grip she keeps over the edit. It's incredible stuff, and I really need to get around to watching Ratcatcher, which is the only one of her films I haven't seen yet. Number 107, The Wolf of Wall Street. Martin Scorsese brought the stylings he perfected within the gangster genre to Wall Street, and guess what? White-collar crime is just as fitting a subject for the style as organized, violent crime. The hefty runtime breezes right by in a film that zips with non-stop frantic speed and feels both faster and shorter in practice than many films that are half its length. Scorsese is really one of the only filmmakers working in the modern age who both earns and appropriately uses the hefty runtimes that seem to get more and more popular in the streaming era. Number 106, Birdman or the Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. I've seen Birdman several times, and it remains just as impressive and entertaining every single time. It also holds a special place in my heart as the first film that I was given a free screening to as a film critic way back when I was still in high school. Number 105, Barton Fink. One of the Coen brothers' best and also one of their most enigmatic. In contrast to some of their immediately arresting masterpieces like No Country for Old Men or Fargo, Barton Fink is a film whose greatness might not become apparent until a while after watching, when it seeps into your subconscious. It's one of their best scripts, and it also gives Johns, Turturro, and Goodman some of the best roles of their respective careers. Number 104, Sonatine. Takeshi Kitano's best work. Sonatine has all the hallmarks of the Yakuza genre, and even his own other Yakuza films, but then it changes. It stops being about the hard-edged violence and starts being about the quiet moments in between. It starts being about the serene, about the camaraderie and the fun and the little joyous moments of life that can be enjoyed by even the most hardened and violent of people. It's a special piece of work that defies expectations and categorization. Number 103, M. Cutting edge and influential is putting it mildly. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, that I believe M should be held up beside Citizen Kane as one of the most important films in terms of advancing the medium of filmmaking. Arriving exactly a decade before Kane, this early sound film epitomizes the biggest leap forward in filmcraft up to that point, after Fritz Lang had already been pushing the envelope with works like Metropolis. Number 102, 8½. One of the great surrealist masterpieces. The influence this film had is hard to quantify, but its ripples can be felt far and wide, even to this day. Number 101, Ace in the Hole. The great Billy Wilder returns to the list with what is perhaps one of his less talked about films, but is undoubtedly one of his best. On its surface, Ace in the Hole is an unconventional, sun-baked noir with a compelling story and an explosive performance from Kirk Douglas. It's excellent no matter how you slice it, but it becomes more powerful and meaningful the more you peel back its layers and get at the heart of the themes it's so effectively exploring. Ace in the Hole is in the league of films like Network and Citizen Ruth that have only continued to become more relevant over time. And we're into the top 100 now. Number 100, The Handmaiden. After his somewhat mixed foray into English-language filmmaking in 2013 with Stoker, Park Chan-wook's first South Korean feature film in 7 years was The Handmaiden, marking his triumphant return to top form with his signature slick direction and what is arguably one of the best thriller screenplays of the 2010s, packed with nuanced character dynamics and plenty of unexpected twists. Number 99, The Godfather. Of course, The Godfather was going to be on this list. Was there ever any doubt? For a lot of people, it lands significantly higher up, if not in their number one spot. While I don't rank it quite so highly, and I also don't consider it the best gangster film, hint hint for what's higher, I do still think it's excellent, obviously, and a truly remarkable feat of directing from Francis Ford Coppola. I'm not a big Brando head. I consider him pretty overrated as an actor most of the time, but he did play a really important role in the broader film industry, and this is absolutely an iconic performance. And the rest of the cast is front to back phenomenal. Within individual scenes, I can fully understand why some consider it the single greatest film ever made. Number 98, The Trial. Orson Welles delivered one of the best filmic depictions of surreal nightmare logic with The Trial, brilliantly capturing that one-of-a-kind Franz Kafka feeling. And he did it way back in 1962, when this style of storytelling was far from common and almost unheard of in Hollywood. It also has one of Anthony Perkins' best roles outside of the Psycho series. Number 97, A Hero. Asghar Farhadi's latest at the time of this recording, and it's another winner. Just like in A Separation, he crafts a compelling moral quandary that could be debated and argued over at length, and he gets the absolute most mileage possible out of that juicy, dramatic premise. Number 96, A Man Escaped, the Prison Break movie to end all Prison Break movies, due to how singularly focused and methodical it all is. Completely silent for long stretches, and never short of being tense as hell throughout its entire duration. Number 95, The King of Comedy. One of the most misunderstood films in Scorsese's filmography, it would seem. Don't go in expecting a comedy because of the title. That's a mistake that far too many people seem to have made, judging by its divisive reception. It's not often singled out as a highlight of Scorsese or De Niro's respective filmographies, but it should be. It's one of De Niro's most complex characters, and he is impossible to take your eyes off of. It's a complete transformation. And if you ever wondered what Todd Phillips' Joker movie would be like if it was actually good, the answer is The King of Comedy. And also Taxi Driver. That movie was really doing nothing original. Number 94, Casablanca. I was real late to the game on Casablanca. I only watched it for the first time a couple of years ago, and yes, it deserves the unassailable reputation that it has and its all-time classic status. The whip-sharp dialogue is the foundation for its greatness, and the production around it lives up to the demands of that excellent script. Number 93, Love Streams. I already professed my love for John Cassavetes and Jenna Rollins extensively in my big video essay about Cassavetes' filmography, so go watch that video to hear more. I talk about Love Streams in particular in its own chapter toward the end. Number 92, Andrei Rublev. I still need to see Ivan's Childhood, so Andrei Rublev is the earliest masterpiece from Andrei Tarkovsky's career that I've seen thus far. It's a slow and perhaps somewhat challenging watch at times, but it also has that inescapable transcendent quality that requires that sort of slow build-up to get to. It's an ethereal sort of film that grows on you long after watching. Number 91, The Sting. This was Paul Newman, Robert Redford, and director George Roy Hill reteaming in an attempt to recapture the magic of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And they were largely successful, though stay tuned to see where I rank that masterpiece. In some ways, The Sting is the definitive con man movie, nailing all of the hallmarks of that genre, while also having self-awareness that keeps everything fun instead of the self-serious tone that many of its imitators take, which helps the more implausible elements of the con go down easy in this one, which is something that all of its imitators struggle with even decades down the line. Number 90, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. It's a classic film that starts out as a fun romp and slowly descends into crushingly bleak territory as Humphrey Bogart steps a bit outside his comfort zone and delivers one of the best portrayals of paranoia on screen. Number 89, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Simply one of the finest westerns ever made. Clint Eastwood and Lee Van Cleef are both iconic, and Eli Wallach arguably steals the show with his flashier and more energetic character. But it's really the way the titular trio play off of each other that makes this thing sing all the way till that incredible standoff finale. And the Civil War backdrop makes for a nice change of pace from most westerns without pulling focus from the core story. Number 88, Amadeus, a grand drama with a bulletproof screenplay, fantastic performances, and great work in the director's chair from Milos Forman. For how stuffy the subject matter had the potential to be, Amadeus is extraordinarily entertaining. Number 87, Army of Shadows. Jean-Pierre Melville's film about the French resistance during Nazi occupation. And if you weren't aware, Melville fought as part of the French resistance in real life prior to beginning his career as a filmmaker. The subject was near and dear to his heart, took him a long-ass time to bring to the screen, and he ended up delivering the most authentic filmic portrayal of that subject matter that is humanly possible. Number 86, Requiem for a Dream. Excessively bleak, but with great performances, even from usually bad actors. And hard-hitting drama that certainly doesn't pull its punches. Plus, it's presented with heaps of style and has an unforgettable score from Clint Mansell and the Kronos Quartet. Deserves extra credit for getting a performance out of Jared Leto where he isn't completely intolerable. Number 85, Ikaru, a heartbreaking performance from the incredibly prolific yet underappreciated character actor Takashi Shimura. He is what anchors this great humanist drama about bureaucracy, morality, and mortality. Number 84, Lawrence of Arabia, perhaps the individual film most deserving of the label epic. This thing is gargantuan, gorgeous, and engrossing in different ways across each of its two distinct halves. Number 83, Le Cercle Rouge, Jean-Pierre Melville's best in my book. People tend to refer to it as a heist film, but the heist component isn't even introduced into the plot until about halfway through. The first half unfolds as a hard-boiled gangster film and is thoroughly engrossing on its own. When it turns into one of the best heist films ever made halfway through, it's a fun surprise, but also a natural extension of that first half. It's like getting a gritty double feature, a slick gangster film and its intricate heist film sequel rolled into one package. Number 82, Dr. Strangelove. a madcap comedy that sticks out like a sore thumb in Kubrick's otherwise dead serious filmography. And maybe he should have directed more comedies, because this thing is hilarious. A great vehicle for Peter Sellers to strut his stuff in multiple roles, too. Number 81, To Kill a Mockingbird, a classic novel and an equally classic film. It's an excellent adaptation, and having experienced both, I would say it's a rare case of the film being better than the book, specifically because of the great performances from Gregory Peck, and Robert Duvall also leaves such a lasting impression in a silent part with limited screen time. And it was the first film role of his career after spending a couple years working in television. The kids are not great, but they luckily don't get in the way of the timeless and impactful story. Number 80, McCabe and Mrs. Miller. Often described less as a Western and more as an anti-Western, and it's easy to see why. It's such a somber affair, and it always zigs where a traditional Western would zag, even though it does still contain many hallmarks of the genre. It's a visually impeccable film that has such a strong sense of time and place and texture, easily one of Robert Altman's best. Number 79, The Elephant Man. Something of an oddity in David Lynch's filmography from the timeline where he was almost a successful semi-mainstream filmmaker before Dune threw that idea in the bin and sent him back down the indie art house experimental route, which was definitely for the best in the long run. That said, The Elephant Man is one of Lynch's most widely accessible films, even though it does still revel in provocative and surreal imagery in the opening sequence. For the most part, it's played as a straight drama, but an incredibly emotionally effective one, with excellent performances from Anthony Hopkins and from John Hurt in the lead role under all those prosthetics, giving a heartbreakingly authentic performance as an ostracized outsider. Number 78, Zone of Interest. This is an incredibly powerful piece of work. Whenever it seems as if filmmakers have exhausted every conceivable angle on the Holocaust, someone like Jonathan Glazer comes along with a completely new perspective. The use of sound in this is second to none, and every single one of Glazer's semi-experimental creative choices are bold enough to catch you off guard and leave a lasting impression. Number 77, Anatomy of a Murder. If 12 Angry Men didn't exist, Anatomy of a Murder would be my pick for the best courtroom drama ever made. That's a little foreshadowing for later on in the list. It's a phenomenally written script that melds the aforementioned courtroom drama perfectly with the film noir genre, and provides compelling characters for both George C. Scott and Jimmy Stewart, two actors I love, both doing some of their finest work. Lee Remick also makes for a quintessential femme fatale, and Anatomy of a Murder was an important early role for not just the aforementioned George C. Scott, but Ben Gazzara too, in his second ever film. Number 76, The Third Man. Orson Welles at his charismatic best, absolutely stealing the show and becoming the biggest reason to watch the film, even though he doesn't actually enter the picture until somewhere around halfway through. But when he does join the film, goddamn is his reveal good. And the rest of the film around him is a solid noir that makes excellent use of striking real locations at a time when most film noirs were still shot mostly or entirely on sound stages. Number 75, The Godfather Part 2. Just like people debate Godfather versus Goodfellas, they also debate Godfather 1 versus Godfather 2. I definitely land on the Godfather Part 2 side, and a lot of that comes down to the expanded role for John Cazale, who is downright revelatory in this film. And the prequel half of the film, with Robert De Niro as young Vito and his violent ascension to power, is just as gripping as the continuing present-day storyline. It was a bold move to make a sequel that was half prequel and so quickly after the original too, but it paid off big time. Number 74, It's a Wonderful Life. It's always seen as a staple of the holiday season, but you could easily watch it any time of year and have a great time. It really is a timeless drama that can be surprisingly bleak, but also extremely joyous. And Jimmy Stewart is wonderful in the lead role, as always. Number 73, Monsieur Hulot's Holiday. A more low-key offering than Jacques Tati's other Monsieur Hulot movies, but I think that's to its benefit. This is a serene and peaceful film that captures the leisurely pace of beach community life, and fittingly, it also feels like going on your own relaxing vacation. It certainly takes its time, but it's also absolutely hilarious when it wants to be, and is bound to get you laughing hysterically in between all the serenity. Number 72, In the Mood for Love. A sumptuous work of aching romance with stunning production design and cinematography. Number 71, The Face of Another. I made a video about this film in my Essential Cinema series, so go watch that video. I said it all there. Link in the description. Number 70, The Sacrifice. The first Tarkovsky film that I saw, and while it wouldn't remain my favorite, it was a great introduction. It's a thematically rich work that features some of the most striking blocking ever put to screen, which is perhaps an odd thing to single out and praise. Some of you might not even be familiar with the term blocking. It's basically the movement and positioning of the actors within frame, as opposed to framing and camera movement itself. Tarkovsky was a master in all regards, including blocking, which a lot of filmmakers don't always pay that much attention to be honest, but the greats always did. Study Tarkovsky's and Kurosawa's work if you want an instant masterclass in blocking. Number 69, a short film about killing. A unique film in many regards. Despite the title, this is not a short film. It is just about feature length. But it's also one of the 2 episodes of the Decalogue that Krzysztof Kieslowski expanded into standalone films, and for me it's the more successful of the 2, though a short film about love has a ton to admire as well. A short film about killing is a bit of a challenging watch, but that's 100% by design. It doesn't make any of the easy choices in its first half, which leads into a bifurcated narrative that sticks the landing and delivers some of the hardest-hitting social commentary that cinema has ever produced. The film is directly cited as a major factor behind Poland's decision to abolish capital punishment. And if that doesn't speak to the power of what Kieslowski accomplished here, then nothing does. Number 68, Wings of Desire. Fish Out of Water is its own sort of subgenre and often takes the form of a comedy following an alien, a time traveler, a person in an unfamiliar land, things like that. But Wim Wenders uses an angel visiting Earth for a fish out of water drama that offers keen insights on the human condition as only someone from outside the mortal coil could offer. It's a beautiful and poignant film, and it packs so much into its runtime. Love the Nick Cave cameo and Peter Falk's outside-the-box but perfectly realized supporting role too. Number 67, The Hunt. Thomas Vinterberg does incredible work behind the camera in The Hunt, really letting his Dog Me 95 roots show through. But the biggest draw of this heavy drama is Mads Mikkelsen, who gives one of the finest performances ever captured on screen. He's the king of subtlety in performance, and when he finally goes big, it's a sight to behold. His big scene in the church is always one of my go-to examples of incredible acting. It's a performance that absolutely nobody else could ever give. Number 66, Adaptation. Charlie Kaufman's brilliantly meta take on the nature of adaptations at large. It's accessible and entertaining for everyone, but it's an especially satisfying watch if you happen to have any experience as a screenwriter. For example, everything with Brian Cox's character is so much better when you know that the guy he's playing is a real person and really is touted as this screenwriting guru that every screenwriter is supposed to admire and learn from. Kaufman packed this movie with little in-jokes only meant for screenwriters, and the movie is so much funnier when you get them. The choices to make himself the main character writing the adaptation itself and to give himself a fictional twin brother to play off of are so outside the box in that trademark Kaufman way that nobody else could have ever pulled off. Cage does good work in the 2 lead roles, but Meryl Streep and especially Chris Cooper really stand out in their supporting roles too. It's just all around excellent. Number 65, La Haine. Gritty and raw, La Haine is an intense, uncompromising film that perfectly nails what it's going for. Also an important film from relatively early on in the career of the great Vincent Cassel. Number 64, The Graduate. One of the most important films ever made, truly, as evidenced by the fact that it keeps coming up in my write-ups for other films on this list from around the same time. One of the key films that kickstarted the new Hollywood movement and forever changed the face of American filmmaking. Number 63, Raging Bull. The only boxing movie that matters. Yeah, I still haven't seen Rocky. I'll get to it eventually, I suppose, but Raging Bull is all I need. Number 62, 12 Years a Slave. Steve McQueen is one of the most exciting filmmakers of the modern era, and 12 Years a Slave is his best work so far. I have an old video essay about this film here on the channel that you can check out if you want to hear more about it. There's a link in the description. And as a bonus, if you're a Steve McQueen fan, be sure to seek out his Small Axe miniseries collection, which seemed to fly just a tiny bit under the radar and isn't talked about as much as it should be. McQueen pulled off some Decalogue-style TV filmmaking with that film collection. Number 61, Inside Llewyn Davis. Not quite a musical, but it is packed with great music and has a story that revolves around music. And I think it's my favorite music-centric film. The characters and performances are all so strong. I think this is still Oscar Isaac's best work. He just conveys this character's weariness and heartbreak in such an authentic way. It's a deeply sad film, but also still so funny in that classic Coen Brothers way. Oddly enough, I'd seen Inside Llewyn Davis 2 or 3 times and greatly enjoyed it, and then I became a big fan of folk music at some point further down the line. And revisiting the film after that increased my appreciation and understanding of it so much more. Number 60, Casino. It annoys me how often Casino is reduced to Goodfellas light. When people say Scorsese was just doing Goodfellas again, that's only true if by doing Goodfellas again you mean making another one of the best gangster films and overall films ever made. I think Casino might actually contain Thelma Schoonmaker's greatest feat of editing too, which is really saying something. I swear the first 45 minutes or so of this film flow like one gigantic montage, and it somehow works perfectly. The way the film flows so quickly yet so effortlessly through its 3-hour runtime is worthy of microscopic study. Number 59, Zodiac. I might get some pushback on this one, I don't know. Zodiac was way too underrated for way too long, only making back about half of its production budget at the domestic box office and earning plenty of conflicted reviews upon initial release. But I think the tide has finally turned in its favor over the years. At any rate, it's one of the best thrillers ever constructed, and its hefty runtime breezes right by through the film's excellent structure, use of multiple leads, and command over tone. There are 1 or 2 downright terrifying sequences in this film that handily outdo the majority of horror films and really imprinted themselves onto my brain when I saw it as a young lad. And it's a film that only continues to get stronger and stronger with every one of the many rewatches I've given it. Number 58, Persona. Ingmar Bergman goes small and surreal with Persona to create a real puzzle box of a film with a special kind of uneasy intimacy. Number 57, Stalker. Andrei Tarkovsky's look at the post-apocalypse and his characteristic slow, powerful, and striking fashion. Stalker, true to its name, stalks up on you, taking its time to cover this journey into the zone in painstaking detail and building to an ending that refuses to give you what you want, but is endlessly impactful in spite of that or perhaps because of it. 56, Aperigito. The middle film in Satyajit Ray's Apu trilogy chronicles the next chapter in the main character's life as he progresses from a young boy into a young man, striking out on his own for the first time in an earnest pursuit of education while dealing with devastating loss and all the little ups and downs of daily life deeply rooted in place and time. Just like the first film, the setting is again one of the biggest strengths of Aperigito, arguably more so as the setting of the first film returns, but now has the big city to be compared to, and that contrast helps draw both in sharper relief. I still need to watch Apu Sansar to conclude the trilogy, and I'll be honest, that's probably the biggest omission from this list, as I suspect it would earn a spot too, that I've already been pushing back this video for multiple years at this point, as I keep watching and adding films to the list, and I had to draw the line somewhere. If I watched this, then there'd be another film that was the biggest omission that I had to watch, and it'd go on and on forever. Number 55, Moonlight. A touching, emotive, and wonderfully tender drama that rings true in all the right ways. Moonlight remains a strong highlight of modern cinema. Number 54, Apocalypse Now. Francis Ford Coppola's Vietnam War epic is one of those films where it's just astonishing that they pulled it off at all, let alone at the caliber it was executed, as evidenced in part by there being an entire documentary about its making, and in part by the fact that Coppola talks about the experience in retrospect, like going through his own war that forever changed him. And it did certainly temper his career moving forward. It marked the end of his unbelievably strong 70s run, and it was a hell of a note to go out on. Number 53, Double Indemnity, the absolute best film noir of the classic era. It has all of the hallmarks, quirks, and staples of the genre, and represents the best in its league in every category. It's got one of the best scripts ever written, not necessarily in terms of the plot, but without a doubt in terms of the dialogue. Every line spoken by the leads is so goddamn sharp, it's a wonder they weren't constantly spewing blood out of their mouths. Number 52, The Deer Hunter. I talked about The Deer Hunter briefly in my John Cazale video, of course, as this contains his final performance, which he gave while already quite debilitated in reality. And I also plan to talk about it more in the video that I hope to eventually make about Michael Cimino's next film, Heaven's Gate. So I'll keep this brief and say that The Deer Hunter is an incredible drama, And I wouldn't even necessarily call it a war film, despite its constant categorization as that. The war film is central to the core character arcs, but it's abundantly clear that the film is far less interested in the war itself than in the inner workings of these characters and the bonds between them. And the film is all the stronger because of it. Number 51, Magnolia. With a hefty runtime and an ensemble cast bursting at the seams with talent, Magnolia is a major highlight of the vignette film format, and also my pick for Paul Thomas Anderson's best work. Apparently. I hadn't realized that necessarily before I got to ranking. And we're into the top 50. Number 50 is Playtime, the greatest pure slapstick comedy ever constructed. And I do mean constructed. The specificity of Jacques Tati's vision and the Swiss watch nature with which he assembles his cinematic playground and the numerous layered jokes within are simply immaculate. Number 49, Pather Panchali. Just like the aforementioned Aparigito, this inaugural entry in the Apu trilogy soars on the strengths of its setting and atmosphere. Not just the locations themselves, of course, but the way they're photographed, expressed, and incorporated into the narrative, which is mostly concerned with the troubles of day-to-day fun and foibles, but also principally concerns the changing times and the ways that complicates a simple, comfortable life. Its heavy moments sneak up on you and hit harder because of how well the lighter moments work and capture a compelling sense of time and place. Number 48, Three Iron. A South Korean romance that plays out entirely wordlessly, and yet you completely believe the connection between these two and remain thoroughly engrossed in the commendably fast-moving plot every step of the way. It includes a couple of elements that sound on paper like they would require through-the-roof suspension of disbelief or just flat-out wouldn't work, but it all does, and it coalesces into a completely unique package. Number 47, Children of Men. I know most people love everything Alfonso Cuarón has done. I mean, aside from his disgusting autism speaks short. But for me, Children of Men is his only film that delivered on all of his potential as a filmmaker. Everything else he's made has been fine but disappointing in comparison, because I've seen the majesty he's capable of. The planning and coordination involved in these gargantuan long takes is just mind-boggling, and their uninterrupted nature adds so much more to the film than the gimmicky long takes in something like 1917 or Victoria. Number 46, Bonnie and Clyde. Not just an excellent film, but an extremely important one in terms of shaking up the American film industry for the better. It was the 1-2 punch of Bonnie and Clyde and The Graduate, both released in 1967, that really kick-started the new Hollywood era, which, as I've mentioned elsewhere, and as you could probably tell from the selections on this list, is my personal favorite era in American filmmaking. This was such a bold and subversive work for the time, and it still holds the power to shock with a couple of moments of violence, especially the iconic ending. Number 45, Before Sunset. I love Richard Linklater's entire Before trilogy, but it's Before Sunset, the middle entry, that hits the hardest emotionally for me. And it also feels like the pinnacle of his casual walk and talk style. The flow of the dialogue, the length of the highly dynamic but understated shots, the use of gorgeous scenery as a backdrop to deep human connection. It's all so beautiful and affecting. And of course, this trilogy wouldn't work nearly as well as it does with two different actors in these lead roles. Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy are incredible independently, but also have endless chemistry together. And Linklater getting them involved in the writing process for Sunset after they weren't involved in the script of Sunrise was such a great collaborative choice, as all three of them know these characters so well. Number 44, A Separation. This was my introduction to the great Iranian filmmaker Asghar Farhadi, and I've been hooked on his work ever since. I've been meaning to make a video essay about his films for an extremely long time, so maybe I should save my thoughts for then. Number 43, No Country for Old Men. The Coen brothers leave behind the humor that defined much of their work, but importantly not all of their work. You can draw a straight line from their first film Blood Simple directly to No Country for Old Men. It's a perfect adaptation of the Cormac McCarthy source material that uses silence and stillness to its advantage. The performances are all good, but of course it's Javier Bardem as Anton Chigurh that stands out the most, instantly becoming one of cinema's best villains. Number 42, Yi Yi. The final feature film from the great Edward Yang, a humanistic exploration of both the mundanity and the emotional turmoil of everyday life, as told through the perspectives of the various members of a family in interweaving vignette-esque fashion. It's a beautiful and poignant film with a keenly observant style and a wealth of memorable characters and interactions that could seem a bit reaching and disparate at first, but build upon each other to say so much about life while remaining decidedly low-key and restrained. Number 41. All About My Mother. I'm still making my way through the work of Pedro Almodóvar, but so far All About My Mother is far and away his best. His trademark dazzling use of color is on full display, and Almodóvar uses the full spectrum of cinematic language to his advantage, crafting a narrative that ping-pongs effortlessly between genres and tones so quickly that it seems like it couldn't possibly feel cohesive when you examine its numerous components in isolation, yet it does feel completely cohesive and completely engrossing every step of the way. Number 40, Chinatown. Written by the great Robert Towne, who in addition to being the credited writer of a couple of the best movies ever made, was also the uncredited script doctor of a whole bunch of additional greatest movies ever made, like Bonnie and Clyde, The Godfather, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, the list goes on and on. Chinatown is often held up in screenwriting circles as one of the finest scripts ever written, and with good reason. Pair that with classy performances from Jack Nicholson, Faye Dunaway, and John Huston, amongst others, and Roman Polanski operating at the absolute height of his powers as a visual director, and you've got a stone-cold classic that stands tall as the peak of the neo-noir genre. Number 39, City of God, a gangster film that is positively bursting with life. It covers such a large swath of time, while also developing so many interconnected characters that are all distinctive and memorable, including the titular city itself, which we see change and grow over the course of the film. Locations are characterized often enough in cinema, but it's pretty rare for a location to have a full-blown character arc. But City of God nails it without even making it its central focus. Number 38, Killers of the Flower Moon. The most recent film to land so high on the list, but it earns its spot and then some. I've already watched this gargantuan epic twice, and I'm eager to get into a third watch because the second viewing already revealed so many more little details to me that I glossed over the first time, and I suspect the third watch will do the same. It remains astonishing to me that Scorsese is still crafting such masterpieces at his age, and after already definitively carving out one of the best bodies of work any filmmaker has ever amassed. Hyperbole be damned, it's true. Number 37, The Enigma of Kaspar Hauser. The first of two collaborations between Werner Herzog and star Bruno S. The Enigma of Kaspar Hauser is based on the true story of a man who was raised in brutal captivity and cut off from the outside world until he showed up one day in a town and had to adapt to that overwhelming change. It's an intriguing premise to begin with, and Herzog's script gets more mileage out of the premise than you probably thought possible. Kaspar has a totally unique perspective on the world that is completely believable due to the circumstances of his upbringing and communicated in an effective and engaging way. It's both beautiful and melancholy in a profound sense. Also worth mentioning that the more striking German title of the film translates as Every Man for Himself and God Against All, which Herzog also titled his recent memoir. Number 36, Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters. Paul Schrader's greatest work as a director. If you appreciate great production design, then Mishima is a real treasure trove, truly one of the most visually arresting films ever composed. And its story tackles interesting ideas and challenging themes with both style and nuance, in a way that leaves a lasting impression and gives you much to think about. Number 35, Blue Velvet. My best horror movies list started to look a little ridiculous with how many David Lynch films were on there, so I saved a couple for here, I guess. After having a disastrous outing in the mainstream filmmaking sphere with Dune, Lynch made Blue Velvet as his tremendous return to form, and it marked his departure from the more conventional filmmaking he had dabbled in with The Elephant Man and Dune, wholly embracing his own unique style for the rest of time, with, I suppose, the exception of The Straight Story, but that's a nice wholesome film in its own right. Number 34, Three Colors Blue. The start of Krzysztof Kieslowski's Three Colors trilogy, but you can go into it as a completely self-contained drama and you'll get a lot out of it. It has a real ending and closure, and you won't be left hanging until you watch the rest of the trilogy. Though I do recommend watching the rest of the trilogy. Just be prepared for white to be a little step down. Blue presents a purer, more authentic depiction of grief than we typically see expressed in cinema, but importantly, it also does so with an extremely complicated core relationship, which the film slowly peels back the layers of. Juliette Binoche is incredible in the lead role, and since it's a Kieslowski film, you know it's going to be absolutely gorgeous visually. Unsurprisingly, the use of the color blue is striking and memorable, but it might be a touch more naturalistic than you may expect, which is to its benefit. Number 33, Mulholland Drive. Another of the couple of Lynch movies that weren't on my best horror list, because I didn't want to overload that one with just all of his movies, so I get to put it here instead. It's incredible as a film, obviously, and it remains a shame that every television executive of the time was too much of a goddamn idiot to let Lynch make his TV version of this premise. I'll never stop thinking about what that could have been. Number 32, The Great Escape. For some reason, this is a real comfort movie for me, and it took a lot of willpower to not rank it even higher. Even though it's 3 hours long and takes the form of a classic 60s epic, it breezes right by. Part of that pacing comes down to its brilliant structure, which takes the standard 3-act structure and breaks them out into more distinct entities, with the tunneling and escape constituting the second act, and the attempts to flee from the various characters constituting the third act, as the film expands far beyond the prison camp where the rest of the movie took place. Given the subject matter of World War II POWs, The Great Escape is surprisingly fun and funny. It's downright lighthearted and borderline slapsticky for long stretches, which makes the sharp pivots it takes back into heavy, gut-wrenching drama hit all the harder. Number 31, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. A scathing critique of not just mental health facilities, but of institutions and authority in general, and perhaps the greatest distillation of the rebellious counterculture energy that Jack Nicholson so perfectly embodied throughout this stretch of his career. On top of that, it's a phenomenal drama with an ensemble cast packed with unforgettable supporting characters, and that has one of cinema's best villains in the form of Nurse Ratched. I am never watching that stupid fucking Nurse Ratched TV show. I hate that they made that. We don't need a fucking Nurse Ratched prequel. Number 30, Fitzcarraldo. Like I said in my film history crash course video, this is the movie where Werner Herzog moved a goddamn boat over a mountain, and I really don't need to say anything more about it than that. Number 29, Ali, Fear Eats the Soul. What seems at first like a typical drama turns out to be far more resonant than you would expect from the outset. Ali, Fear Eats the Soul is a film that sneaks up on you with its power. The way it uses color and uses silence, its character-driven social drama, its odd combo of two lead characters that you never see paired up anywhere else. It all has remarkable staying power. This is a film that I find popping back into my mind from time to time, seemingly out of the blue, and I find myself appreciating it more and more every time it does. Number 28, Barry Lyndon. Sorry, 2001 fans, Barry Lyndon is Kubrick's best work. He set out to craft a sumptuous period drama where every frame resembled a magnificent painting, and he succeeded several times over. And it's also just an incredible story with fantastic performances. Number 27, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. The incredible true story of a man left with only the use of one of his eyes after the rest of his body was completely paralyzed by a stroke. And the remarkable way in which he was still able to live a creative and fulfilling life. The story is captivating on its own, but the drama is made so much more immediate and engrossing through the filmmaking decisions at play, namely presenting a significant portion of the film from the lead character's point of view, locking the audience inside of his paralyzed body. And since this point of view is so central to the drama, it's taken far beyond a typical POV shot that you'd see in another movie, complete with simulated blinking, distorted vision, and a unique use of depth of field and other lens distortions. Just like I said of At Eternity's Gate, director Julian Schnabel's background as a painter and multidisciplinary artist shows through and informs the film in an excellent way, though in a completely different way than the more literal connection through Van Gogh. Number 26, Nostalgia. I think this is Andrei Tarkovsky's best. I don't know if that's a controversial stance or not. I never really see this one touted as his best. Usually that honor goes to Mirror, Stalker, or Andrei Rublev. But hey, all those are on my list too, so you really can't go wrong with Tarkovsky. The guy was one of the true masters of the craft, and operating at a level far beyond most people's greatest aspirations. The images he conjures up in Nostalgia are just magical, and the way he utilizes long takes feels integral to the narrative and themes this time around, whereas they're always impressive and breathtaking. The single shot where Oleg Yankovsky attempts to keep a candle lit while crossing a drained pool lasts for over 9 minutes, and it's some of the most gripping drama ever committed to film. And it's packed with enough meaning all on its own for hours of discussion. It's my pick for the best scene of Tarkovsky's career, and one of the best individual shots in existence. And that's only one of the film's several magnificent and unforgettable sequences. Number 25, Peppermint Candy. I already made a dedicated video about this one. You can find a link to it in the description. Number 24, Cool Hand Luke. Paul Newman really was one of the most charismatic actors to ever live, and this just might be the best evidence of that. I don't think the film is typically considered part of the New Hollywood movement, but I think it is, or at least it partially is in really important ways. It was released in 1967, the same year as The Graduate and Bonnie and Clyde, which are the two films typically credited with kickstarting that movement, and I believe Cool Hand Luke should be added to that mix to make it a trio. It's the unsung third Kickstarter. Cool Hand Luke feels like it straddles the changing times and is perfectly representative of both sides. Like it has one foot in the yet undefined New Hollywood movement and one foot still in Old Hollywood. It manages to feel like one last blast of everything that worked about the old ways with none of the bad, while also perfectly encapsulating the counterculture spirit of the changing times and serving as a giant middle finger to the establishment and institutions in charge, which is a balance that's carried not just through the filmmaking but also the subdued yet endlessly rebellious titular character. Number 23, A Woman Under the Influence. This was my introduction to the directorial work of John Cassavetes, and it was never topped. I talked about this one extensively in my big John Cassavetes video essay, so go watch that one to hear more. Number 22, Old Boy. The middle and best film in Park Chan-wook's Vengeance trilogy, but also a completely standalone film adapted from an independent source material. The whole trilogy is great, so whether you watch it in or out of that context, you can't go wrong. Choi Min-sik gives one of the best, most committed performances in not just South Korean cinema, but cinema in general, as Oh-Dae-soo, a man imprisoned for 15 years who, upon finally being released, sets off on a whirlwind revenge mission. It's perfectly plotted, slickly directed, and has one of the best fight scenes ever shot, despite otherwise not being an action movie. Number 21, The Irishman. I tend to call The Irishman a post-gangster film rather than a gangster film, in the way that there's punk and then post-punk. It's a film that couldn't exist in this form if its creator hadn't already led a long career dotted with genre-defining masterpieces. This is a tremendous and transcendent piece of work that more than earns every second of its hefty runtime. In fact, it's eminently rewatchable, and I always want it to just keep going and going by the time it draws to a close. Number 20, High and Low. My pick for Akira Kurosawa's best. I know most people would go with one of his samurai outings, Seven Samurai in particular usually, but High and Low outdoes them all for me. It has the best script of any of his films, which poses a complicated central question that is dripping with social commentary, and then proceeds to explore that central question from every conceivable angle, while Kurosawa constructs layered ensemble compositions and compelling mise-en-scène that are striking and always in support of the drama unfolding. The film has a distinctive two-act structure, where the first half takes place entirely in a single room, and the second half explodes beyond those borders into the rest of the city. And each half works in isolation while also elevating the other through that stark contrast. It's just wonderful. Number 19, Network. Perhaps the pinnacle of a laser-focused social commentary, and despite being made in the 70s, it has never and likely will never cease to be as relevant as the day it was penned. Number 18, Synecdoche, New York. Charlie Kaufman has been responsible in part for a bunch of the most interesting and original films that modern cinema has to offer. After working for years as a screenwriter exclusively, Synecdoche, New York was his first spin in the director's chair, and he made something special and miraculous. It's dense and endlessly complex, and seems like the kind of film that might have been too ambitious to possibly pull off. Yet Kaufman nailed it. It also features the best performance of the great Philip Seymour Hoffman, which is seriously saying something since he was never anything short of incredible. Number 17, Reds. People argue over which year marked the official end of the New Hollywood movement. You'll find people saying it was 1983 or 1980 or even 1979. But one thing is for certain, 1981's Reds is a perfect encapsulation of the ideals of New Hollywood and might just be the last truly essential work from that vital period in film history. It's a tremendous drama with perfectly expressive camera work by the great Vittorio Storaro, an effectively epic scope, and all-timer performances from Jack Jack Nicholson, Diane Keaton, and Warren Beatty, who was also in the director's chair and, of course, doing incredible work there as well. But what really takes the film over the edge is its bold political messaging, which offers an unabashedly pro-socialist, pro-communist look at the Bolshevik Revolution. It's a message that was incredibly daring at the time and makes for a film that has only gotten better with age. Number 16, Interrogation. This one was perhaps the most surprising discovery to me. I mentioned this film in my 2023 recap video, but it was the second best film I watched that year, and it came out of absolutely nowhere. I had never heard of the film or the director and just randomly put it on because I had watched Clear Cut earlier that day from the same director and saw that he had another movie that someone had just put on YouTube randomly that the copyright system hadn't ripped down yet. I put it on out of the blue, and it turned out to be one of the best films I've ever seen. It's an extremely powerful and emotionally resonant piece of work, and also a bold and daring film. You'll see it listed as coming out in 1989, but it was actually finished and ready to be released as early as 1982, before being banned for all those intervening years by the Polish government, which was ruling under martial law at the time and under criticism through the film's social commentary, albeit somewhat indirectly as it is a period piece set in the 50s. But the parallel was clear enough and the message powerful enough to get the government quaking in its boots. And if a film gets banned by a government, that's usually a sign of high quality. Number 15, Spring, Summer, Winter, Fall, and Spring. While not 100% dialogue-free like Kim Ki-duk's 3 Iron, more or less, from earlier on in the list, Spring, Summer, Winter, Fall, and Spring is extremely light on dialogue and instead embodies a tranquil beauty to tell its Buddhist narrative that is quietly powerful and visually stunning every step of the way. Number 14, Taxi Driver. The iconic Scorsese x Schrader duo led to many great films, but their first outing forever remained the best. The fixations that Schrader would continue exploring throughout his career were already present and refined in Taxi Driver. Robert De Niro taps into something nearly inhuman to turn Travis Bickle into one of cinema's most fascinating and complex characters. And Scorsese was working at the height of his powers, making bold directorial choices that nobody else would have ever thought to make. Number 13, 12 Angry Men. The pinnacle of the single-location drama. It's one of the best screenplays ever written, with dialogue so vivid you'll forget that you're trapped inside this sweaty room for the entire runtime. And Sidney Lumet is dynamite in the director's chair, making what could have been a stuffy and cheap-looking film into a dynamic and visually engaging watch, while bringing the best out of his performers as he always did. Number 12, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. There's a reason why so many writers hold the work of William Goldman up as the gold standard of screenwriting, and his script for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid was his best work. It plucks 2 historic figures out of the annals of Wild West history and makes them the subject of a grand Western adventure that soars off the strengths of its strong characters, sharp dialogue, and endless supply of charisma between Paul Newman and Robert Redford. And if you weren't aware, yes, this is where the Sundance Film Festival got its name, started by Robert Redford after this character. Number 11, Fanny and Alexander, the crowning achievement of Ingmar Bergman's prolific and illustrious career, at least out of those that I've seen thus far, which is quite a few. The 3-hour cut is great, but it's really the 5-hour and 12-minute cut that earns this spot on the list. It's a phenomenal drama that smartly uses the perspective of the titular children and those in their orbit to tackle a story that moves effortlessly between genres and themes and weaves everything together in masterful fashion. The characters are all rich and complex and have suitably strong performances, and the Bishop is an especially unforgettable character, one of cinema's best villains, despite being far less flashy and flamboyantly evil than the characters that often receive that label. And we are finally into the top 10. Number 10 is Harakiri. I could call Harakiri the greatest samurai film ever made, but honestly, calling it a samurai film feels a bit limiting. It isn't overly concerned with the hallmarks of samurai films as a genre and doesn't get caught up on those trappings, instead using the setting and figures of the era to tell one of the tightest and most engrossing stories in all of cinema. Tatsuya Nakadai is again incredible in this lead role. He's been in a ton of the films that I've covered already, and believe it or not, Harakiri still isn't his final appearance on the list, nor is it director Masake Kobayashi's final appearance. The real film buffs might be able to guess what's coming later on from that. Number 9, The Lovers on the Bridge. I have a review for this one in my Essential Cinema series, so go check out that video to hear my full thoughts on The Lovers on the Bridge. Number 8, Strutzig. Werner Herzog's second and final collaboration with star Bruno S. And it was also Bruno S.'s second and final real film role. He was kind of in a couple of other projects, but not really. He wasn't really an actor. He was more of a street musician that Herzog had a fascination with and put in these two movies. Bruno S.'s own life paralleled Kaspar Hauser's to a heartbreaking degree. It felt like a role he was born to play. Then Strutzig took things further by quite literally being written for him and based largely on his life. It's an extremely bleak and depressing film, and not just because of the association with Joy Division frontman Ian Curtis taking his own life after watching it. Strutzig is a powerhouse drama that takes an outsider's look at the lie of the American dream, and it's an unforgettable film. Number 7, Dog Day Afternoon. I've already spent so long talking about Dog Day Afternoon on this channel across multiple videos. If you've seen any of those other videos, then I'm sure you knew that the film would rank so highly here. You've probably already seen my John Cazale video, since that is for some reason the only one of my videos that the YouTube algorithm ever decided to push. But you can also hear me talk about Dog Day Afternoon in my How to Give Actors Freedom video essay as well. Plus I mention it here and there all over the place. I am obsessed with this film. I can't get enough of it. Number 6. Paris, Texas. This is one of those films that I'm just constantly thinking about. It has some magical allure, and it's never far from my mind. The great Harry Dean Stanton rarely ever took on a leading role, but here he is absolutely perfect. One of my all-time favorite performances. And every other role is perfectly cast and performed as well, especially Natasha Kinski. It's an all-around perfect film. Number 5. Akira, The Wrath of God. I feel like Werner Herzog is one of those filmmakers that everybody knows about. They know the accent and the eccentricities, but I feel like his name doesn't come up often enough in the discussions of the actual greatest filmmakers of all time. And maybe that has something to do with the fact that he's also made a bunch of weird and not so incredible movies as well, but it's definitely worth taking stock of just how many films he had on my list. And be aware that his version of Nosferatu would absolutely be on this list as well, if it wasn't already included in my top 100 horror films list. Akira, The Wrath of God is his best work all around. It's a film that seems like it shouldn't be able to exist. Even more than the miraculous feat of Herzog dragging a boat over a mountain for Fitzcarraldo, the feats pulled off in Akira seem impossible. It speaks to the results that Herzog's eccentric and fully committed tactics can achieve. Embedding himself deep in the real Amazon rainforest, filming on the water of the actual Amazon River, and risking life and limb on a daily basis to pull off a miraculous achievement of filmmaking. It's just incredible. And honestly, it's a better telling of Heart of Darkness than Apocalypse Now, just by happenstance. It's not an adaptation of that book, but it captures its essence and themes perfectly. Also worth noting that this was the first of the 5 Herzog x Kinski collaborations, and Kinski is so fucking intense and menacing in the titular role. It's also probably his best physical performance, the way he walks, slouches to one side, stares people down. He's terrifying and unforgettable. Number 4, 3 Colors Red. 3 Colors White was a little bit of a misstep. It's still fine, it's not bad or anything, but it pales in comparison to both blue and red. And luckily Red ends Krzysztof Kieslowski's great trilogy on the highest note possible. Red excels in all of the same ways that blue does, but executes them just a tiny bit better. But it's really the ending that ties everything together and elevates the whole trilogy. Watch all 3, blue, white, red, in that order. Number 3, Goodfellas. There's an eternal debate over Godfather versus Goodfellas, with people forever arguing which is the best gangster film ever made. Lots of people land on the Godfather side, and with good reason, I think that's fair. But I obviously land on Goodfellas. Not just as the best gangster film ever made, but as one of the top 3 best films ever made, full stop. I'm going to also declare here and now that Goodfellas is the best paced film in existence, and one of the best structured films on top of that. It moves like lightning, and every single scene is filled with such energy and vibrancy. Every editing choice empowered by the great Thelma Schoonmaker, and every single one of Scorsese's directorial choices down to the tiniest detail are all absolutely perfect. Number 2, Come and See. The most harrowing war film ever made, and also the bleakest. This is not an easy watch by any means, but it is an important one. It truly pulls no punches when showcasing not just the general horrors of war, but the specific atrocities committed on the Eastern Front of World War II. And it's made all the more devastating through the perspective used to showcase it, the eyes of a child. The lead performance of Alexei Kravchenko is just staggering. It's genuinely hard to fathom that someone so young and with no acting experience could give a performance this gut-wrenching. And that again makes everything feel so much more devastating and real. You don't see an actor in a war film. You see a real teenager living through the worst circumstances imaginable and being forever transformed in heartbreaking fashion. And when you hit the point where it seems like things couldn't possibly get any worse, you haven't even gotten to the film's most shocking scene yet. It's a film so good and so powerful that its director, Elem Klimov, immediately retired after making it, knowing he could never outdo it. And no film since ever has outdone it. But there is one project that came before it. Finally, number 1, The Human Condition. You can call this a trilogy, or you can call it a 6-part film series, or you can consider it one gigantic film that clocks in at about 10 hours long. If you think it's unfair that a trilogy has taken the top spot, 1, fuck you, it's my list, okay? 2, you can pretend that the trilogy took the first, second, and third place spots on the list if you want, if that makes you feel any better. But then I'd have to lop off the bottom couple of movies, and highlighting more great films is better, right? And 3, I would have also lumped other great trilogies together if they were equal enough in quality to land in consecutive spots. The Before trilogy peaks in the middle, the Three Colors trilogy sags in the middle, but each volume of The Human Condition is already a staggeringly brilliant piece of work on its own, and the three somehow coalesce into something even more profound as a total narrative and a landmark achievement in filmmaking. I will be doing a full video all about the Human Condition trilogy in my Essential Cinema series. It's already in the works, so stay tuned for that video. And whew, oh my god, okay, it's finally over. That's the end of the list. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of this long-ass video. I'm sure there were some surprises and contentious picks along the way. Once again, you can subscribe to my newly created Patreon if you want to see the next 19 runners-up. I think I might have said there were 18 runners-up at the start of the video, but I added another one while recording, so it's at 19 now. There's plenty more videos linked in the description and elsewhere on the channel to keep you busy if you somehow want even more after this exhausting video. So I'll see you around. Thanks for watching. So long.